air. But how did you get to be Lord and Master of the earth, of the sea, and of the air? You could never have done it in your condition, losing the knowledge of yourself, not able to bury your dead. Your dead would die and lay there in the cave with you, rotten and stink. You didn't know how to cook your food. You didn't know how to build. But God turned merciful and sent Moses up in the caves. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. How was he lifted up? Moses went up there. The Caucasian was in terrible condition. Moses had to sleep in a ring of fire because, like animals are afraid of fire, they were afraid of fire. But Moses taught them about fire. Moses taught them how to bury their dead. Moses taught them how to build a home for themselves. Moses taught them the way of God and some of the forgotten technology, so that they had truth and they had tricks, so that they could go on to their destiny to rule until the coming of God. They have a statue of Moses in the Congressional Library. Moses, the great emancipator. They've kissed his toe until the toe had become, the metal had been worn off of it. They love Moses, because without Moses, they would never have gotten up out of the caves. Moses had a job west. Moses had a job east. After Moses he got him to teach them. Oh yeah, I'm not telling no lies now. They have come a long way. But don't you laugh. Don't you laugh. Because you're crawling around on your all fours like a dog today yourself. You are all out of shape and you're funky as hell. Don't tell me, just like they were done, they have done it also unto you. Moses had a hard time civilizing white people. He had to put a board in their back so they could stand upright. Because after you crawl around for 1,000 years, you're used to that, so they had to have a board. And every time he would look around, they'd snatch the board out. The board in the back also represents the law of God that will straighten you up from living a life of an animal. But every time Moses would turn his back, they would forsake the law. Because without the law, you fall down on a dead level and you become a serpent, you become a dragon, you become a beast. But when you obey God's law, He allows you to grow in uprightness and you can become a righteous person. Moses' law was a powerful law. That law was to last for 2,000 years until the coming of Jesus. But 1,700 years from Moses, a man named Nimrod was born. Nimrod was born on December the 25th. Nimrod was a wicked man, had sex with his own mother. Nimrod was really something. And after Nimrod grew into power, Nimrod broke the law of Moses, meaning broke the strength of that law on the Caucasian people. So the board, which is the law, was taken out of their back. And when Jesus was born into the world, darkness was over the whole of that area. Wherever Europe was, it was in darkness. Palestine. You say, well, how did white people get into Palestine and Syria and Iraq and all those places that were the province of black people? How did that happen? See, they are shaped in the image and the likeness of God. We are the God that they're talking about. The original people. White people have our life, our form. Yes. They come from the original man. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that when they were cable towed and put out into Europe, we rounded up all that we could find. We couldn't find them all. They were hidden in the homes of some of our people, and they grew up among us. And so the Bible says the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair skin. Yeah, well, fair means just. Fair means equitable. But in this case, fair means white. Because white people are known to be just and equitable. Because they're white. So if you're black, you're the opposite of fair and equitable. I mean, this is the symbolism. But the sons of God, black, saw the daughters of men, white, fair, and took them as wives, and race mixing began in the Holy Land. So you know what race mixing produces? Produces people my color, some of your color, some even lighter. Now you among the people, and then the conquerors start coming out of Europe down into these areas of the world, conquering, marrying, intermarrying, and so now the real black Egyptian is pushed out from southern Egypt. Southern Egypt is up north, to northern Egypt, which is really what we would call south. As they get closer to the Sudan, you see the real Egyptian called Nubians, real black. But in Cairo, it's a mixture. My color, lighter, some darker. You go to Syria, you see white Syrians, but you look close, you see some dark ones in there. You go to Palestine, you see white people in what they call Israel, and you see Semitic Jews, which are dark. Then you see the real black ones, who are the original people of that area. But wherever you find the black, they are under white rule. Whether it is in the Arab world, we're ruled by white Arabs. If we're in the Christian world, we're ruled by white Christians. If we're in the Jewish world, we're ruled by white Jews. If you're a communist, you're ruled by white communists. If you're a socialist, you're ruled by white socialists. If you're a doctor, doctor, you're ruled by white doctors. If you're a lawyer, you're ruled by a white lawyer. You ain't ruled by nothing black, and even the God that you worship.
Throughout the entire world today, dark mankind is waking up and undergoing a new type of thinking. And this new type of thinking is creating new approaches and new reactions that make it almost impossible to figure out what the black man is going to do next. And by black man, we mean, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we mean that this includes those who are not white. He teaches us that black is the basic color in all colors. Black is the foundation or the basis. And all of our people, or all of the people who have not yet become white, are still black, or are at least part of the black nation. So here at Muhammad's Mosque, when you hear us use the term black, we mean everybody who is here. Despite your complexion, if you're here at the mosque, you're black. Because the only ticket you need to get into Muhammad's Mosque is to be black. So if you got in, you know you're black. You may not have known you were black before you came here. In fact, very few of our people really look upon themselves as being black. They think of themselves as practically everything else on the color spectrum except black. And no matter how dark one of our people may be, you never hear him call himself black. But now that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching among the so-called Negroes, you find our people at all complexions running around here bragging about, I'm a black man. Well, this shows you that a new teaching is taking place and that there is new thinking among the so-called Negroes. If just yesterday you would have to admit that it was very difficult to get our people to refer to themselves as black, and then now all of a sudden you find all of us of all complexions not apologizing for being black, but bragging about being black. Well, there's a new thinking that has sprung up here in America among the so-called Negroes. And the one who is actually the author of this new thinking is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is what he is teaching that's making our people for the first time proud to be black. And what's most important of all, for the first time, it makes our people want to know more about black, want to know why black is good, or what there is about black that's good. I might stop right here to point out, some of you may say, well, I come out here to listen to some religion of Islam, and all I hear you talk about is black. We don't separate our religion from our color, nor do we separate our color from our religion. The white man doesn't. The white man never has separated Christianity from white, nor has he separated white from Christianity. When you hear the white man bragging about, I'm a Christian, he's bragging about he's a white man. And the average Negro, when you hear him bragging about he's a Christian, he's bragging about he's a white man, or he wants to be white. And usually those Negroes who brag like that, I think you'll have to agree, their songs and the things that they sing in church bear out that they have a greater desire to be white than anything else. My mother was a Christian, and father was a Christian. And I used to hear them when I was a little child sing songs, Wash Me White as Snow. My father was a black man, and my mother was a black woman. But yet the songs that they sang in their church were designed to fill their heart with a desire to be white. So many people, especially our people, they would get resentful to hear us say something like this. But then, rather than get resentful, all they have to do is think back over the many of the songs and much of the teaching and the doctrine that they were taught while they were going to church, and they have to agree that it was all designed to make us look down at black and up at white. So the religion that we have, the religion of Islam, the religion that makes us Muslims, the religion that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching us here in America today, is designed to undo in our mind what the white man has done to us. It's designed to undo the type of brainwashing that we had to undergo for 400 years at the hands of the white man in order to bring us down to the level that we're on today. So, when you hear us use great. When you hear us often refer to black, and almost in a boastful way, and actually we're not boasting, we're speaking of it in a factual sense. All we're doing is telling the truth about our people. Whenever you exalt black, that's not propaganda. When you exalt white, that's propaganda. Because no one can give biological evidence that there is any basis to elevate white or place white above everything else. But you can give biological evidence to show where black actually is the stronger and the superior of the two, if you want to make that kind of comparison. So never think ill of the person whom you hear representing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad if an overemphasis seems to be placed upon black, but rather sit and analyze and try and get an understanding. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that of all the things the black man can study, or any man can study for that matter, history is best qualified to reward all research. You have to have a knowledge of history no matter what you're going to do. Anything that you undertake, you have to have a knowledge of history in order to be successful in it. The thing that has made the so-called Negro in America fail more so than any other thing is your and my lack of knowledge concerning history. We know less about history than anything else. There are black people in America who have mastered the mathematical sciences, have become professors and experts in physics, are able to toss Sputnik out there in the atmosphere, out in space. They're masters in that field. We have black men who have mastered the field of medicine. We have black men who have mastered other fields. But very seldom do we have black men in America who have mastered the knowledge of history of the black man himself. They are experts. We have among our people those who are experts in every field. But seldom can you find one from among us who is an expert on the history of the black man. And because of his lack of knowledge concerning the history of the black man, no matter how much he excels in these other sciences, he's always confined. He's always relegated to the same low rung of the ladder that the dumbest of our people are relegated to. And all of this stems from his lack of knowledge concerning history. What made Dr. George Washington Carver a Negro scientist instead of a scientist? What made Paul Robeson a Negro actor instead of an actor? What made Ralph Bunche, or makes Ralph Bunche, a Negro statesman instead of a statesman? The only difference between Bunche and Carver and these others whom I just mentioned, they don't know the history of the black man. Bunche is an expert, an international politician, a politician on the international level. But Bunche doesn't know himself. He has no knowledge of the history of his own people. He can be sent all over the world by America to solve problems for America, or to solve problems for other nations, but he can't solve problems for his own people in this country. Why? What is it that ties our people up in this way? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says it boils down to just one word: history. When you study the history of Bunche, his history is different from the history of the black man who just comes here from Africa. And if you notice, Bunche was in Atlanta, Georgia during the summer NAACP convention. He was Jim Crow. He was segregated. He was not allowed to go in a hotel down there. Yet there are Africans who can come here black as night and go in some of these cracker hotels. Well, what is the difference between Bunche and one of them? The difference is Bunche doesn't know his history, and they, the Africans, do know their history. They may come here out of the jungle, but they know their history. They may come here wearing sheets with their head all wrapped up, but they know their history. You and I can come out of Harvard, but we don't know our history. And the basic difference in why we are treated as we are, one knows his history and one doesn't know his history. The American Negro doesn't know his history. The American so-called Negro is a soldier who doesn't know his history. He's a servant in America who doesn't know his history. He's a graduate from Harvard or Columbia or Yale or Howard or Tuskegee who doesn't know his history. And because he doesn't know his history, he's confined. He's limited. He's held under the control and the jurisdiction of the white man who knows more about the history of the Negro than the Negro knows about himself. But when you and I wake up, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and learn our history, learn the history of our kind as well as the history of the white kind, then then the white man is at a disadvantage and we're at an advantage. The only thing that puts you and me at a disadvantage is our lack of knowledge concerning history. So one of the reasons, one of the missions, one of the objectives of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad here in America is not only to teach you and me the right religion, but to teach you and me history. In fact, do you know that if you and I know history, we know the right religion? The only way right now that you can become confused, become mixed up and not know which religion belongs to God is if you don't know history. In fact, you have to know history to know something about God. You have to know history to know something about God's religion. You have to know history to know something about God's people. You have to know history to know something about God's plans and God's purposes. And as I say, the only people who don't know history are the American so-called Negroes. If you know history, for an example, whenever you look at this religion right here, the only way you can explain it is to have a knowledge of history. Why is it called Christianity? It is called Christianity, they say, because it was named after a man called Christ, who was born 2,000 years ago. Now, you know, brothers and sisters, God is an old God. And the world is an old world. It's been here a long time. I think all of you will agree that the universe has been here longer than 2,000 years. And you'll also agree that the universe was made by God himself. That God created the universe. God created the people who are on this earth. God wouldn't create a universe. God wouldn't put a sun up in the sky and make 9 planets rotate around it, all of them inhabited. You and I inhabiting the planet Earth upon which we live. God wouldn't have done all of this and not given people a religion. God put his religion here at the creation of the universe. God's religion is as old as the universe. In fact, God's religion is older than the universe. Now then, since you agree to this, and you'll also agree that Christ was born 2,000 years ago, which means Christianity is only 2,000 years old, this couldn't have been God's religion. If your knowledge of history shows you that God couldn't call his religion Christianity, because Christianity is only 2,000 years old. So if this is the case, then what was God's religion called before the birth of Christ? Can you see the importance of history? Why, if you didn't know history, you'd think that this was God's religion. And you'd be running around here practicing this, wondering why everybody doesn't practice this. Because some people have a better knowledge of history than others do. It is only the people whose knowledge of history is limited who try and jump up and say that Christianity is the name of God's religion. If Christianity hasn't always been the name of God's religion, it now isn't the name of God's religion. God doesn't change the name of his religion. God doesn't even change his religion. God doesn't change his mind. God's mind is made up from the beginning. He doesn't have to change his mind, because he knows all there is to know all the way down the wheel of time. He never has to change his mind. His mind is made up. His knowledge is complete. It's all encompassing. Do you understand? So, once you can see, and I think you can, that it's almost impossible for God to call this his religion. What did God call his religion? Christians are the ones who call God's religion Christianity, but God was here before Christians came on the scene. They tell you that the Christians had their beginning back there with the Romans. One of the Roman emperors who supposedly accepted the teachings of some of Jesus' disciples and then named what the disciples taught Christianity. But Jesus didn't even call it Christianity. This wasn't named this until 200 or 300 years after Jesus was dead. Right or wrong. Any history book will tell this. Any Bible will tell this. Any religion, any theologian should have a knowledge of this. And the only Negroes who will contend with this are those who don't know history. And most Negroes don't know history. And most Negroes will contend with it. But when you tell it to the white man, he shuts his mouth, because he knows that this is true. So then those who have studied a little deeper, they'll say, well, before it was called Christianity, it was called Judaism. Isn't this what they say? Named after a man called Judah. This right here doesn't follow logic. If Christianity became named this after Christ was born, and before Christ was born the religion was called Judaism, then that means that this got its name from the son of Jacob, whose name was Judah. But history tells us that Jacob was serving God before Judah was born, which shows us that Jacob's religion couldn't have been Judaism, and Isaac was Jacob's father. He was serving God also before Jacob, his son, was born. Isaac was Judah's grandfather, and Abraham was Judah's great-grandfather, meaning Abraham was on the scene long before Judah came on the scene. Now, you couldn't call Abraham's religion Judaism, because there was no such thing as Judaism in Abraham's day. There was no such thing as Judaism in Isaac's day or in Jacob's day. Do you understand? So what was God's religion before they called it Judaism? And this is something that the white man has never taught you and me. The white man is afraid to let you and me know what God's religion was called in Abraham's day, because Abraham was supposed to have been known as the father of all of them. He was supposed to be the progenitor of all of them. He's supposed to be one of God's first servants. One of the first to submit to God is supposed to be Abraham. Now, if you can see this, then find out what was Abraham's religion. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us Abraham's religion was the religion of Islam.
Just remind those of you who I did not speak about Islam. It was Hatzad Qubad ibn Rabad, otherwise called Bilal, who started the first part of the Quran. It was Muhammad ibn Abdullah himself who stated that his grandmother, his mother's mother, came from Ethiopia. It was he himself who sent to Ethiopia, to the emperor, to send him help when he was being chased out of Mecca. When in Mecca they were worshipping the goddess Alat, A-L'-L-A-T, Alat, and Al-Huza, A-L'-L-A-T, Alat, and Al-Huza, A-L-A-H-O-U-S-A. Alat became Allah. And the most important symbol of Islam is still the Kaaba, a black stone, a meter from Ethiopia. Most of the writers of early Islam having come from Ethiopia, such as Al-Sinin, Al-Aziz, and others. But when they show the picture of Muhammad done by an Arab, they only show Bilal as a slave. They didn't even show that slave. But what kind of a slave? That his slavery was as a lawyer, because he was when he went to Mecca as ambassador for the Ethiopian government, they then held him there and enslaved him over political risk. Nothing said when they came here. That was the beginning of Islam was here with Muhammad ibn Abdullah in 622 AD, or it's also known as the year 1 of the Hijrah. The Hijrah means the year Muhammad ibn Abdullah fled Mecca with Abu Bakr, Umar the Great, Hatzad Qubad ibn Rabad, Bilal, himself, and others, the other fathers. And it was 639 that they came here as conquerors with what is called the jihads, J-I-H-A-D-S, or holy wars. Everybody using the Africans for the foundation of their religion and concepts.
Islam only means complete submission to God, complete obedience to God. Abraham obeyed God. Abraham obeyed God so much so that when God told Abraham to take his son and sacrifice him, stick a dagger in his heart. Is that what he told him? Abraham took his only son up on the mountain and was going to sacrifice him to God, showing you that he believed in Islam. What does Islam mean? Obey God. Submit to God. So that this name here, if you'll notice, has no connection, no association with the birth of a man. This is not a man's name. This doesn't come from a man. This comes from a man. Buddhism was named after a man called Buddha. Confucianism was named after a man called Confucian. Right or Confucius, right or wrong. Likewise with Judaism and Christianity. But Islam is not connected with any man. Islam is independent of any man. Islam is an act, which means submit completely to God or obey God. And when you say your religion is Islam, that means you're a Muslim. So, to clarify this, what must you do? You must have a knowledge of history. If you don't have a knowledge of history, you'll run around calling yourself a Christian, swearing you're serving God. Or you run around saying that your religion is Judaism, you swear you're serving God. If your religion is Christianity, you follow in Christ. If your religion is Judaism, you follow in Judah. If your religion is Buddhism, you follow in Buddha. Do you understand? And they're all dead. And if you follow them, you'll die too. This is where it leads you. Wherever your leader is, that's what happens to you. Now, we who follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we believe in Islam. We don't believe in Muhammad. We believe in Islam. He teaches us the religion of Islam. Do you understand the difference? These people they believe in Christ. They believe Christ is God. Oh, yes, they do. That he was born of the Blessed Virgin. That's what they believe. Didn't have a father, just a spirit. And then came into the world and was crucified and went up into space. They believe that. But they believe that because they don't know history. Because you'll find the people, if you notice, the Jews have a greater knowledge of history than the Christians do. Do they not? The Christian history only goes back 2,000 years. The history of the Jews go back beyond 4,000 years. Can you see this? And the Muslim history goes back. There's no limit to the Muslim history. If you notice, the Christians can only go back to what they call the Greek Empire. Usually they go back to that's what they call the Occidental, the beginning of the Occident, the Greek Empire, Roman Empire, and so forth. The Jews have a knowledge of history that goes back into Egypt and Babylon. You notice how they all go back farther than the other. But now the Muslim history goes back. It has no limit. There are no chains on how far you can go back when you're a Muslim. The Christian and the Jew combined go back to whom? To Adam. And they stop right there. And they say beyond him there was nothing happening. Well, this is because they don't know. But the more history they have, the greater their knowledge of history is, this has an influence on the type of religion that they accept. You understand? All praise is due to Allah. Another example. What makes the royal family of Europe or any country differ from the peasants? Royalty knows its ancestry. Royalty knows its history. This is what makes them royal. You can't have a king who can't trace his history on back into his forefathers. The only way he can be king is to be born a king. But if you take away his history and he doesn't know who his forefathers are, what does he become? A peasant, a common ordinary man. Same with the Jews and the Christians. It's because the Jews have the longest record of history that they can call themselves the chosen people. The Christians can't call themselves the chosen people because their history is not long enough. They can't go back to the time when the choice was being made. But the Hebrews, the so-called Jews, they can go back so far they can lay claim to that which actually is not there. But the reason they can claim it because nobody else that they're dealing with can go back far enough to dispute it. But the Muslims. Do you understand? So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's mission is to teach the so-called Negroes a knowledge of history, the history of self, of ourselves, our own kind, and by giving us a knowledge of this history concerning our own kind, show us how we fit into prophecy, how we fit into the prophecies of the Bible, biblical prophecies. Which means, when you go in one of these churches, usually they name their church after some word in this Bible. Big Rock Baptist Church, or Drinking at the Well Baptist Church. They got all those kind of names, brother. Friendship Baptist, Union Baptist, Israel Baptist, Jacob's Ladder Baptist. Isn't that how they name them? They find some kind of old funny word in this Bible to name their whole religion after. Their whole doctrine is based on a verse in the Bible. He-Road Baptist Church. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad bases what he teaches not on a verse, but upon the entire book. From beginning to end, he says that he can open up the book and prove that what he's teaching is true, and prove that the Bible agrees with him, and then use the Bible to prove that what they're teaching in the church is wrong. You know, that's saying something. For instance, he says that in Genesis, the 15th chapter and the 13th verse, to give you an example, he points out where it says, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was mentioning this verse tonight on the radio. He said, "And God said unto Abraham, Know for a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward they shall come out with great substance." Now the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that explains his teaching right there. Because he teaches that the so-called Negroes are the ones that the Bible is talking about, who have spent 400 years as strangers in a land that isn't theirs. And you can't deny that we're strangers here. I don't think any of y'all will deny that we're strangers here. We're not in a country where we're made to feel at home. We'll put it that way. There's hardly any Negro in his right mind can say he feels at home in America. He has to admit that he's made to feel like a stranger. Right or wrong? Well, this is what God told Abraham. This is what God told Abraham would happen in this day and time. Remember, Abraham's religion was Islam. Abraham wasn't a Jew. Abraham wasn't a Christian. Abraham wasn't a Buddha. Abraham was a Muslim. Which means he obeyed God. God told him, your people are going into bondage. They're going to become slaves. They're going to be afflicted. They'll be strangers far from home for 400 years. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, you and I are the seed of Abraham. We're the descendant of Abraham. Now the preacher in the church, he tells you that the Jew is the seed of Abraham. One of them is right and one of them is wrong. Either Mr. Muhammad is right and the preacher is wrong, or the preacher is right and Mr. Muhammad is wrong. This is what we are putting on the line today. Who is the seed of Abraham? Is it this blue-eyed, blonde-haired, pale-skinned Jew, or is it the so-called Negro? You. Who is it? And what makes it so pitiful, many of our people would rather believe that the Jew is God's chosen people than to believe that they are God's chosen people. They would rather believe that God is going to save the Jew than to believe that God is going to save them. They would rather believe that the Jew is better than anybody else than to believe that they themselves are better than anybody else. This is a Negro. Wouldn't nobody else think like this but a Negro? Nobody else would put everybody in would rather believe that the Jew is better than anybody else than to believe that they themselves are better than anybody else. This is a Negro. Wouldn't nobody else think like this but a Negro? Nobody else would put everybody else on top of him but the Negro. No one else would place himself below everyone else but the Negro. I mean, the American Negro. Now look what God said. That the people would be strangers. The Jews aren't strangers. The Jews know their history. The Jews know their culture. The Jews know their language. They know everything there is to know about themselves. They know how to rob you. They know how to be your landlord. They know how to be your grocer. They know how to be your lawyer. They know how to join the NAACP and become the president. Right or wrong. They know how to control everything you got. You can't say they're lost, but the poor so-called Negro, he hasn't control over anything. He doesn't control the NAACP. He can't control the Urban League. He can't control CORE. He can't control his church. He can't control his own school. He can't control his own businesses and his own community. He can't even control his own mind. He's lost and lost control of himself and gone astray. So he fits the picture here that the Bible says concerning our people in the last day. Know for a surety that thy seed shall be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them. And you have served the white man. He hasn't served you and me. Why, the Jew hasn't served anybody here. You are the one that served. And they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. And afterward they shall come out with great substance. Oftentimes when you say this to the so-called Negroes, they'll come up and tell you that this is the Jew. But if you notice, when Jesus was talking to the Jew way back here in John, he told them that they shall know the truth and it'll make them free. The Jew popped up and says, how are you going to say we shall be made free? We have never been in bondage to anyone. Isn't that what the Jews told Jesus? Well, now look here. If the Jews told Jesus 2,000 years after Moses supposedly led the Hebrews out of bondage, that they had never been in bondage. Now, you know the Jews had Moses' history. They knew who Moses was. How could they stand up and tell Jesus they had never been in bondage? Because they had never been in bondage. Not these things that you call Jews. They weren't in Egypt. Those weren't the people that Moses led out of Egypt. And the Jew knows this. But the Bible is written in such a tricky way, when you read it, you think that Moses led the Jews out of bondage. But if you get a Jew in a good, solid conversation today, and you know how to talk to him, he has to admit to you that it wasn't out of Egypt land that Moses brought them. It wasn't out of bondage that Moses brought them. It was out of somewhere else. And then where Moses really brought them is their secret. But thanks to Almighty God, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad knows their secret. And he told it to us. And we're going to jump to that. If the Bible says that God is going to judge that nation, the nation that enslaved his people, how will he keep from destroying his own people? Same Bible is a book of history. And in the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy, God told Moses, and in the 18th verse, God told Moses, I will raise them up a prophet. Talking about you and me, I'll raise them up a prophet just like thee, a prophet like Moses, whose mission it will be to do for you and me the same thing Moses did back then. It would be a prophet like Moses. And back when you get down into Malachi, he lets it be known that just before he comes to judge that nation, the name of the prophet or messenger whom he would send among the people, his name would be Elijah. It says, before the coming of that great and dreadful day, I'll send you Elijah. And Elijah's job will be to turn the hearts of the children to the fathers and the hearts of the fathers to the children. What do you mean, turn the hearts of the children to the fathers? The so-called Negroes are childlike people. We're like children. No matter how old you get, or how bold you get, or how wise you get, or how rich you get, or how educated you get, the white man still calls you what? Boy. Why? You're a child in his eyesight. And you are a child. Anytime you have to let another man set up a factory for you, and you can't set up a factory for yourself, you're a child. Anytime another man can open up businesses and you don't know how to go into businesses for yourself and your people, you're a child. Anytime another man sets up schools and you don't know how to set up your own schools, you're a child. Because a child is someone who sits around and waits for his father to do for him what he should be doing for himself, or what he's too young to do for himself, or what he's too dumb to do for himself. So the white man, knowing that here in America all the Negro has done, and this is, I hate to say it, but it's the truth. All you and I have done is build churches and let the white man build factories. You and I build churches and let the white man build schools. You and I build churches and let the white man build up everything for himself. And then after we build a church, we got to go and beg the white man for a job. And beg the white man for some education. Am I right or wrong? That's a shame. It's too bad, but it's true. And it's history. So it says that these childlike people who will be children, following after the white man, it says in the last day that God will raise up Elijah. And Elijah's job will be to turn the hearts of these children back toward their father. Elijah will come and change our minds. He'll teach us something that will turn us completely around. When Elijah finds us, we'll be easy to lead in the wrong direction, but hard to lead in the right direction. But when Elijah gets through teaching the lost sheep or the lost people of God, he'll turn them around. He'll change their mind. He'll put a bone in their back. He'll make them throw their shoulders back and stand upright like men for the first time. It says he'll turn the hearts of these children toward their fathers and the hearts of the fathers toward the children. This is something that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is doing here in America today. You and I haven't thought in terms of our forefathers. We haven't thought of our fathers. Our brother are back home. Our fathers are in the East. We run around here begging the great white father. You never hear black people in this country talking or speaking or thinking in terms of connecting themselves with their own kind back home. They're trying to make a contact with the white man. Pick up on that. That's true. Trying to make a contact, trying to make a connection with the white man. Trying to make a connection with a kidnapper who brought them here. Trying to make a connection with actually the man who enslaved them. You know, that's a shame. It's pitiful, but it's true. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that when Elijah comes, the book says when Elijah comes, what Elijah would do would be to teach these people the truth. And the truth that Elijah would teach to the people would be so strong, it would make all this other stuff that the preachers are talking about sound like a fairy story. Elijah would open the people's eyes up so wide that from then on a preacher couldn't talk to them. And this is really true. Do you know people have come to Muhammad's mosque, and no matter whether they believed in what Mr. Muhammad is saying or not, they never can go back and sit in the church. This is true. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad does is turn on the light. And when he turns on the light, it enables us to see, to think, and to be able to see and think for ourselves. He shows us where the white man, what he has taught us concerning history has actually been a distortion. He's never given you and me true facts about history, neither about himself nor about our people. You know, I read a book one day called The 4 Cities of Troy. You can go to the library, some library, and check it out. What was this based on? Show you what a liar the white man is. When I say liar, you have white people who are scientists, and they keep truth in their own circle. And they never let they never let the masses know anything about this truth that they keep in the circle. They got something else that they invent and put out for the masses to believe. But they then something else that they invent and put out for the masses to believe. But they themselves keep knowledge in a circle. So, in this particular book, it pointed out that some archaeologists were delving in the ruins of the ancient city of Troy. And it's the practice of archaeologists, you know, to dig. So in digging down into the ruins of Troy, they dug deeper than they intended to. And they ran into the ruins of another city that had been there so much longer ahead of this city of Troy that it had gone down beneath the sands of time. And they had built this city of Troy on top of it, and when these archaeologists were delving in the ruins of the ancient city, they learned that there was one that was there more ancient than that. So they started frantically digging down in that one and dug below it into another one. And before they got through digging, they had dug down and they had discovered that civilization in that area had been there so far back into history that at different times in history, the civilization had been destroyed, had become completely covered up with sand and dirt, until another people came along and didn't even know it was there, and built another civilization on top of that. This happened 4 different times to give you somewhat of an idea of what the white man knows concerning the length of time man has been on this earth. And still that white man will jump up in your face and try and make you believe that first man was made 6,000 years ago, named Adam. And a lot of Negroes are running around here talking about Adam. That's God caught him. God took some dust and breathed on it and told Adam, come forth, and there he was. Now, you know, that's a shame. It's all right when you were a little baby to believe that God made a little doll out of the sand or mud and breathed on it, and that was the first man. But when you were a child, it's all right to believe like that. But here in 1962, with all this information floating around in everybody's ears, you can get it free. Why, you should open up your mind and your head and your heart and realize that you have been led by lies. And today that it's time to listen to nothing but naked, undiluted truth. And when you know the truth, as Jesus says, truth will make you free. Abraham Lincoln won't make you free. Truth will make you free. When you know the truth, you're free. Also, you have your archaeologists, anthropologists, other forms of historians who agree, pretty well agree, that they don't know how long man has been on earth. That they do know that he has been on earth longer than 6,000 years, and they know that man was not made just 6,000 years ago. They know this now, but a long time ago they didn't know it. There was a time when man had less ribs than a woman. People believe that because they said that God made Eve from one of Adam's ribs. So Adam had a rib missing. And they actually ran around here believing that man had one less rib. And you know, they were shook up when they really got into the science of anatomy and discovered that man, all his ribs were there. They began to wonder then what happened there in the Bible. That's a shame, brother. How long has man been here? In the Bible, in the first chapter of Genesis, and in the 26th verse, after God had made everything else, it says here, and God said, "Let us make man." Let me write what God said here on the board. Look what God said, brother. I don't think you've ever looked at this. And it says, and God said, "Let us make man." The key word here is what? Yes. What does us mean? More than one. Who was God talking to? If God was all by himself and no one was here but him, who was he talking to when he said, "Let us make man"? Who was here with God that was about to help him make this man? When God was getting ready to make the sun, he didn't say, "Let us make some sun." He said, "Let there be light." And here the sun, a ball of fire, 2,679,785 miles in circumference, 853,000 miles in diameter, 14,172 degrees hot. And God can say, "Let there be," and that big ball of fire pop up in the universe with no help. Now you know something is wrong. It should be harder to make that than a man. A huge ball of fire, 2,679,785 miles in circumference, 14,172 degrees hot. That's a whole lot of heat. And God said, "Let there be," and it just jumped up into the universe. He didn't ask for no help. He said, "Let there be this and let there be that." He had so much power that everything he wanted came into existence. As soon as he said "be," there it was. But when he got to the man, something happened. He said, "Let us make man." Someone else was there then, wasn't there? That's something to think about. We'll let you think about it for a minute. The white man's world is a newer world than the black man's world. Yet this man that they said that they were about to make, and he said, "We'll make him how? In our image," showing you that there's somebody there with him. In our likeness, showing you that still somebody is there with him. Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let us make him look like us. He won't be the same as we are. He'll be our image. That's God talking, right? He's talking to somebody. You know, I'm thankful to Allah for raising up the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and making us see these things that we could never see before. The birth of the white race has always been a secret. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the birth of the white race is shrouded in the story of Adam. The story of Adam hides the birth of the white race. And because you and I have never been taught to look into a thing and analyze a thing, we took the story of Adam exactly as it was and thought that God made a man named Adam 6,000 years ago. But today, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that that man, Adam, was a white man. But before Adam was made, the black man was already here. And that's not easy, that's not hard to see. The black man always sees, the white man will even tell you that. Because he refers to Adam as the first one. He refers to the Adamites as those who came from that first one. And he refers to the pre-Adamites as those who were here before Adam. Right or wrong? Those people that were here before Adam. And he always refers to these people as aborigines, which means what? Black folks. But you never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American. Aborigine actually means from the beginning. It's two Latin words. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning. And aborigine is only the term applied to those dark-skinned people who have been on this earth since the beginning of the universe. You know, that's going way back. You say, what you mean, since the beginning of the universe? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that just as we pointed out there a moment ago, the black man has been here a long time. He never has had a beginning, but the white man has never had a knowledge of the history of the black man. It's like a father and a son. If the father is 50 years old and the son is only 10, the father knows everything there is to know about his son because he was here before his son was born. The son only knows what has happened during his own 10 years. He only knows what went on before his arrival from what his father tells him. It's the same way with the black man and the white man. The black man's been here a long time, but the white man has been here a short time. Now, the white man only knows about himself what he's been told, and he hasn't been told anything. He came to himself up in the caves of Europe. He can't get any information that goes beyond the caves. And since you and I fell into his trap and was made deaf, dumb, and blind by him, now we don't have access to any information that the white man doesn't know about. So we think that the beginning of the white man meant the beginning of everything. Us too. We're not aware that we were here before he was made. Can you understand that? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that back 66 trillion, since you and I fell into his trap and was made deaf, dumb, and blind by him, now we don't have access to any information that the white man doesn't know about. So we think that the beginning of the white man meant the beginning of everything. Us too. We're not aware that we were here before he was made. Can you understand that? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that back 66 trillion years ago. Trillion, how much is trillion? Not hundreds, but nor thousands, nor millions, nor billions, but 66 trillion years ago, the black man was here then. But at that time, like we have the sun, which is the center of the universe, and the planet that we live on here called Earth, next to the black man was here then. But at that time, like we have the sun, which is the center of the universe, and the planet that we live on here called Earth, next to the 46 million miles from the sun is a planet called Mercury, and 67,200,000 miles from the sun, another planet is another planet called Venus, and 93 million miles from the sun is the planet here that you and I live on called Earth. 141,500,000 miles out here is a planet called Mars, and 483 million miles from the sun is a planet called Jupiter, and 886 million miles from the sun is a planet called Saturn, and on down the road a piece are a couple more planets. So right here, this planet that this planet that you and I live on called Earth, that rotates around the sun. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that 66 trillion years ago, our people were living on this planet. The black man was living on this planet. But in those days, it was larger than it is now. And the planet Mars that was off here beyond us had an effect upon our planet then in the same manner that the moon affects us today. At that time, there was no moon up there. Where was the moon? The moon was down here. The moon was part of this planet. The moon and this planet were one planet. And the black man was living here then. He was a scientist. He was a wise black man. Black men have always been wise. Black men have always been the wisest being in the universe. And among these beings, black beings, there is one who is supreme. He's referred to as the supreme. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that a wise black scientist 66 trillion years ago began to argue with the other scientists because there was something he wanted the people of Earth to speak a certain language. And because they wouldn't agree, he wanted to destroy civilization. So this scientist drilled a shaft into the center of the Earth and filled it with high explosives and set it off. He was trying to destroy civilization. He was trying to destroy the black man. But you can't destroy the black man. The black man can't destroy himself. The black man has the most powerful brain in the universe. There is no intelligence more powerful than the intelligence of the black man. And because of this, the black man can't even create a thought that will destroy him. He's indestructible. You can blow up everything and the black man will still be here. You just can't get away from him, brother. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said they filled the earth, the high explosives and set it off. And when it was exploded, the piece that you and I today call moon was tossed out here into space, and it rotated around the earth. It still rotates around the earth. It came from the earth. It was blasted right out from the earth. And as it was blasted out from the earth, it turned over and over and over, and all of the water that was on it came along with the earth, stayed with the earth, so that the piece that was blasted out there has no water on it today. And because it has no water on it, it has no civilization on it, has no life on it. You can't have life where there's no water. Water is the source of life. Where there's no water, there's no life. Where there's no life, there's no civilization. Can you understand that? So this dead piece, called moon by us today, turning over and over and over, losing all of its water, all of the water coming with this piece. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that this piece, that the earth that we remained on, shifted, it dropped 36,000 miles in the pocket that we remained in. And as it dropped, and all of the water came with it, it left a situation where today he says the earth that we now live on weighs 6 sextillion tons. The weight of it is 6 sextillion tons. And as it makes its way around the sun, the strong power of the sun's rays striking the equator causes the planet to turn on its own axis at the speed of 1,137 and a third miles per hour. Now you would say that, and he teaches us that the square mileage of the earth is 196,940,000 square miles, which means only 57,255,000 square miles of land stick up out of 139,785,000 square miles of water. 3/4 of the earth's surface is covered with water, part of the water that left the moon and came with the earth. So you may say, well, how come, since it's the natural law for water to seek its own level, why doesn't it overrun the land? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that as the earth speeds around the sun, turning on its axis 1,037 and a third miles per hour, it creates gravity, and the strong attracting power of the sun pulls on the waters of the earth, pulls them up into the sun and up into the earth's atmosphere in a fine mist that the naked eye can hardly detect. And as this water gathers in the earth's atmosphere, it then distills and comes back to earth. After it gets heavier than the atmosphere in which it is in, it distills and comes back to the earth in the form of water, hail, or rain, or snow. All of the water that you see coming out the sky went up into the sky. Everything that's coming down on the earth got up there by leaving the earth. Do you understand? And he teaches us that it comes back down in the form of hail or rain or snow or whatever else you have, depending upon the temperature of the current of atmosphere that it was in. He says that at night the moon, the gravitational pull of the moon takes over. And because the power of the moon is not as great as that of the sun, once the attracting power of the sun is absent at night, then the moon takes over. And since it can't pull the waters up like the sun does, it still has that magnetic pull, and it causes the waves that you see out there on the ocean to churn. This is the moon that does that. The moon makes the waves go up and down. It never lets them level out. If it leveled out, it would overrun the land. It also causes the shifting of the tides. This is the pull of the moon upon the waters of the earth. If it weren't for the attracting power of the sun and the moon upon the earth, why, the waters would overrun the land and drown out civilization. All of this was done by man himself, not some mystery God, but a black man set this up. And you and I have been running around here in the trap that the white man put us in, thinking that the only one who can do anything either is a mystery God, and what the mystery God doesn't do, the white man does. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that all the time that this was going on, there was no white man. White man was nowhere on the scene. He says that when the moon was blasted away and we came along with the earth, in fact, one tribe was destroyed. Prior to the time that the explosion took place, there were 13 tribes. In the explosion set off 66 trillion years ago, the 13th tribe was destroyed. And then all of the time down through the wheel of time since then, there were 12 tribes. Until 6,000 years ago. And 6,000 years ago, a scientist named Yaqub created another tribe on this earth. Understand? Prior to the time the explosion took place, there were 13 tribes. But the 13th tribe was destroyed in that explosion. And from then until now, just 6,000 years ago, another tribe came on the scene. It was made. Different from all of the 12 tribes that were here when it arrived. A new tribe, a weak tribe, a wicked tribe, a devilish tribe, a diabolical tribe, a tribe that is devilish by nature. So, but before they got on the scene, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when we came with the earth, the oldest city on earth is the holy city of Mecca in Arabia. Mecca is the oldest city on earth. Mecca is the city that is forbidden. No one can go there but the black man. No one can go there but the Muslim. No one can go there but the believer. No one can go there but the righteous. And at Mecca are kept the records of history that go on back into the beginning of time. He says that 50,000 years ago, another scientist named Shabazz became angry with the scientists of his day. He wanted to bring about a tougher people. He wanted the people to undergo a form of life that would make them tough and hard, and the other scientists wouldn't agree with him. So this scientist named Shabazz took his family and wandered down into the jungles of Africa. Prior to that time, no one lived in the jungle. Our people were soft. They were black, but they were soft and delicate. Fine. They had straight hair. Right here on this earth. You find some of them look like that right today. They are black as night, but their hair is like silk. And originally all our people had that kind of hair. But this scientist took his family down into the jungles of Africa. And there, living in the open, and living a jungle life, eating all kinds of food, it had an effect on the appearance of our people. Actually, living in the rough sun, in the rough climate, our hair became stiff, like it is now. We undertook new features that we have now. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the only hair that the black man has today that looks now like it looked prior to 50,000 years ago is your and my eyebrows. Right here, you notice all Negroes got straight, don't care how nappy their head is, they got straight eyebrows. Some of them, when you see a nappy eyebrows Negro, you got somebody. But all of this took place back in history, and everything the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches is based on history. Now then, where does the white man come in? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the wise black man, who was a master of science, he never wrote his history like it's written today of the past, but the wise black man in that day wrote his history in the future. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the circumference of the earth is 24,896 miles, approximately 25,000 miles. So he says the wise black man in the East writes history a year to every mile. He writes history to last for 25,000 years, not in the past, but in the future. He says that on this earth there are wise black men who can tune in and tell what's going to happen in the future just as clear. They can see ahead just as clear as they can see in the past. And every 25,000 years, he says that civilization reaches its peak, or reaches its perfection. And at this time, the wise black man can hear a pin drop anywhere on the planet Earth. And they sit down and write history to last for 25,000 years. After this history has expired, they put it in a vault at the holy city of Mecca and write a new history. This has been going on and on and on and on and on. So he says, in the year one of the cycle in which we now live, the king, he says, in the East there are 24 wise men. They're spoken of in the Bible as 24 elders, or 24 prophets, or 24... Muhammad says that when these 23 men are called together by this one, which makes 24. And these 24, these 23, presided over by the 24th, are spoken of in the book of Revelations, where John said he had a vision in heaven where there was a throne. And around the throne were 24 seats, and on the seats sat 24 elders. These 24 elders that are called angels are actually 24 wise black men who live right here on this earth. But no one knows who they are. At the end of every 25,000 years, this one calls all of them into conference. And they sit down at the holy city of Mecca. The history for the past 25,000 years has expired, and it's time to write a new history. So these scientists begin to tune in on the population of the planet Earth. And he says that back in this day, at that time, there were 5 billion people on this earth, all of them black, not a white man in sight. 5 billion people, not a white man in sight. So he says that when these 24 scientists begin to tune in, they look down through the wheel of time. They can tell not only what the people on this earth are thinking, but they can tell what their children are thinking, what their unborn children's children are thinking, what their unborn children's children's children are thinking. They can look right down through the wheel of time and tell minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, for 25,000 years exactly what is going to take place. And they discovered that in the year 8,400 to come, they would register among the 5 billion black people, 70% would be satisfied and 30% would be dissatisfied. And out of that 30% would be born a wise black scientist named Yaqub. And Yaqub would teach among these 30% dissatisfied, from whom he would come and create a new race, start a new world, and a new civilization that would rule this earth for 6,000 years to come. So they brought these findings back to the king. It was put in the book, and by the way, that which is written to last for 25 years is called Holy Quran. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that this was put into the history, and then when the year 8,400 came, Yaqub was born. When Yaqub reached the age of 6 years old, he was playing in the sand one day with 2 pieces of metal, 2 pieces of steel, at which time he discovered what is known as the law of magnetism, that unlike attracts and like repels. 2 objects that are alike repel each other, like 2 women repel each other. But man and woman attract each other. Unlike attract and like repel. Yaqub discovered this. So Yaqub knew that all he had to do was make a man unlike any other people on this earth, and because he would be different, he would attract all other people. Then he could teach this man a science called tricknology, which is the science of tricks and lies. And that this weak man would be able to use that science to trick and rob and rule the world. So Yaqub turned to his uncle and said, when I grow up, I'm going to make a man who will rule you. And Yaqub's uncle said, what can you make other than that which will cause bloodshed and wickedness in the land? And Yaqub pointed to his head and said, I know that which you know not. Yaqub was born with a determined idea to make this man, because it had been predicted 8,400 years prior to his birth that he would be born to do this work. So he was born with this idea in him. And when his uncle realized that this was he about whom it was prophesied, his uncle submitted. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that Yaqub went to school in the East. He studied the astronomical sciences, mathematical sciences, and the germination of man. He discovered that in the black man There are two germs. In the black man, there's a brown man. In the black man, or the black germ, which is the strong germ, there's a weak germ, a brown germ. Yaqub was the first one to discover this. And Yaqub knew that by separating that brown one from the black one, and then grafting the brown one until it became lighter and lighter and lighter, it would eventually reach its lightest stage, which is known as white. And when it got to that stage, it would be weak. And because it was weak, it would be susceptible to wickedness. And then Yaqub could take that weak man that he made and teach him how to lie and rob and cheat, and thereby become the ruler of all the rest of the world. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that Yaqub began to preach. At the age of 16, he began to preach over there in Arabia, in the east. He preached among the 30% who were dissatisfied and got many of them to follow him. As they began to listen to Yaqub's teachings and believe it, his teaching spread. His followers grew, and it created confusion in the land. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that so much confusion came into existence over there that they threw Yaqub's followers in jail. And as fast as they were thrown in jail, they taught more people. So the teaching spread in jail. Finally, Yaqub was put in jail under an alias. And one day the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the thing began to get out of hand, and the authorities went to the king and told him that they couldn't control these people, but that they had the leader of the people in jail right now. And the king said, take me to him. And when the king went to the jail where Yaqub was, he greeted Yaqub. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Yaqub. I know you're Mr. Yaqub. And Yaqub said, wa alaikum salam, I am Yaqub. And the king said, look, I come to make an agreement with you. I know that you are the one that it is written or predicted would be on the scene in this day and would create a new race, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. But in order for us to have peace, we want to make an agreement with you. In order to stop the confusion, and for there to be some peace in the land, we want you to agree to take all who will follow you and exile yourselves out on an island in the Aegean Sea. Yaqub told them, I'll go, but you've got to give me everything that I will need to bring into existence a new civilization. You've got to give me everything I'll need, that which will last me. You got to supply me with everything I need for the next 20 years. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the king agreed with Yaqub to supply him. The government of that day agreed to supply Yaqub and his followers with everything that they need for 20 years. And he says that you get this in the Bible where it says Jacob wrestled with the angel. Jacob was Yaqub. And the angel that Jacob wrestled with wasn't God. It was the government of that day. Angel only means a power, or somebody with power. When a man has wings, or when a man has his wings clipped, you say that he lost his power, lost his position. So wings only mean a position of power and prestige. So when it says that Yaqub wrestled with the angel, angel is only used as a symbol to hide who it was Jacob was really wrestling with. Jacob was wrestling with the government of that day, and he made the government of that day give him everything he needs to last him and his followers for 20 years. Just like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is telling the government of this day that they got to give us everything we need in our own separate territory to last us for 20 to 25 years. You say, well, so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that Yaqub agreed, the government agreed. Yaqub took all of his followers down to the sea. And he says that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that Yaqub took 59,999 of his followers down to the seaside, with himself made 60,000. He piled them in boats and took them out to an island in the Aegean Sea called Pilar. In the Bible, it's called Patmos. When you read in the book of Revelation where John on the island of Patmos for the word of the Lord, that was Yaqub. What was John doing on the island of Patmos? John was Yaqub. John was out there getting ready to make a new race. He says, for the word of the Lord. What was the word of the Lord? The word was that in the year 8,400, a new man would be made. A new race would be made. And when Yaqub and his followers got out there, his followers realized that Yaqub was wiser than any man of his day. And they recognized him as a god. He was a god to them. So when you get there in the Bible where it says, and God said, let us make man, what was Yaqub do? Not the supreme being. It wasn't the supreme being who made the sun that said, let us make man. When the supreme being made the sun, he said, let there be light. He showed he was supreme. He was independent. He needed no help, no associate. But when it comes to making a man, that God said, let us make man. He didn't speak with independence because there were two different gods. God, the supreme being, made the light. His word is being. That's how he makes things. But Yaqub, who was a lesser God, he said to 59,999 of his followers, let us make man. Let us make a man in our image and in our likeness. We're going to make a white man. Yaqub, this was Yaqub talking. Make him in our image and in our likeness, and give him dominion over the fowl of the air and the fish of the sea and the creatures of the land. And we call him Adam. It's only a name for the white man. The white man has taken mastery over the air. His airplanes rule the sky. His submarines and ships rule the sea. His armies rule the land. This was the man that was made 6,000 years ago, and the purpose for making him was so he could rule the world for 6,000 years. That's the white man. Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that first thing Yaqub did, he got his ministers, doctors, nurses, and cremators together. He gave them the law because he had to set up a birth control law. He told the doctors, whenever two black ones come to you to get married, stick a needle in their vein, take some blood, and go back and come and tell them that their blood doesn't match so that they can't get married. So he also said when a black one and a brown one come, let them get married. Or two brown ones come, let them get married. And then he told the nurse 9 months after they are married, when you go to deliver their child, if it's a black child, put a needle in its brain and feed it to a wild animal, let it be destroyed. But if it's a brown child, take that child to the mother and tell her that this is going to be a great man when he grows up, because he's lighter than the others. But they tell her that the child that you destroyed was an angel baby, and that it went up to heaven to prepare a place for her when she died. Same old line that they tell you today. Little baby died, they say it went to heaven. A baby died, goes the same place a man goes when he dies, right down into the ground. Is that right or wrong? So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us that Yaqub right there set up his birth control law. Within 200 years, they had killed off all the black babies on the island. Everything black on the island had been destroyed. And then Yaqub only lived to 150 years old, but he left laws and rules and regulations behind for his followers to go by. And after they had destroyed all of the black on the island of Pilar, then they began to work on the ground. They saved the yellow and destroyed the brown. Because in the black there's brown. In the brown there's yellow. Can you see how it goes? The darkest one always has a lighter one in it. So in the black man there's a brown man. In the brown man there's a yellow man. In the yellow man there's what? A white man. Oh yeah, getting weaker all the time. So it took 200 years to destroy the black. And then they worked on the brown for 200 years, and in 200 years all the brown was destroyed, and all they had on the island of Pilar was a yellow or mulatto-looking civilization. And then they went to work on it and began to destroy it out, so that by the time after 600 years of destruction on the island of Pilar, they had grafted away the black, grafted away the brown, grafted away the yellow, and all they had left was a pale-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired thing that you call a man, but actually the Bible calls him the devil. That's the devil that the Bible is talking about. Oh, Lucifer, Satan, or the serpent. Because the lighter they got, the weaker they got. As they began to get lighter and lighter, they grew weaker and weaker. Their blood became weaker. Their bones became weaker. Their mind became weaker. Their morals became weaker. They became a wicked race. By nature, wicked. Why by nature? The book says, concerning the devil, he says, he was conceived in iniquity and born in sin. What does it mean? That it took, when Yaqub was, when the nurses, at the outside, the nurses had to kill the little black baby. But after a while, it got so that the mother, through having been brainwashed, hated that black one so much, she killed it herself. Killed it herself. And saved the light one. And right on down, for 600 years, in order for the white one to come into existence, the darker one was always murdered. This went right into the nature of the child that was being born. The mother wanted a light baby when the child was being conceived. Just went right into the baby. The mother hated black when the child was being conceived. This went right into the baby. So that at the end of 600 years of planting the seed of iniquity right into the brain, right into the mind, right into the heart, right into the nature of these people. By the time they got the white man, they had something that by nature hated everything that was darker than what he was. Why, they had to murder off the black in order to get to the brown. They had to murder off the brown in order to get to the yellow. They had to murder off the black, brown, and yellow in order to get to the white. And right to this very day, the white man by nature wants to murder black, brown, red, and yellow. You don't have to teach him to kill a black man. He does it for sport. He does it for kicks. He does it because it's nature to do it. Do you understand that? So in 600 years, now they got a devil on the scene. A blue-eyed devil. A blonde head, oh yeah. They was out here on the island of Ceylon. That's where Yaqub was dead. Yaqub was their father, but he never saw them, they never saw him. When the Bible, Yaqub was their God. When the Bible says no man has seen God, that's what it means. No white man has seen their God. None of them saw Yaqub because Yaqub only lived to be 150. That doesn't mean that no man can see God, the supreme being. While the book of Revelation said when he comes, every eye will see him. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that after these devils got drafted, now we're not going to call them white anymore, we call them what they are. Well, white, that's their color. But devil, that's what they are. These aren't white people. You're not using the right language when you say the white man. You call it devil. When you call him devil, you call him by his name. Then he got another name, Satan. Another name, serpent. Another name, snake. Another name, beast. All these names are in the Bible for the white man. Another name, Pharaoh. Another name, Caesar. Another name, Frenchman, Englishman, American. All those are just names for the devil. So after they were out there for 600, after they had been made and grafted, and Yaqub was dead, then they packed up the bag and made it back into civilization. Yaqub had left them some laws how to go by. He left them a science called technology, how to divide and conquer. Yaqub told these people in his books, all you got to do to take over the world is lie. Go back among the black people. Take your woman and send her to the black man's woman. And let her lie about the neighbor across the street. And then send another woman to that woman to lie on this woman to that woman. And when they get through spreading those lies, and they all start fighting and killing one another, you tell them, let you be the mediator. This is the trick the white man used. It all comes from Yaqub. See, he's an underdog. He's a minority. And the only way a minority can rule a majority is got to divide the majority. This is the trick that the white man was born to execute among dark mankind here on this earth. Yaqub said, when you go back among them, lie one on the other, and when they start fighting each other, ask them to let you be the mediator. And as soon as you become the mediator, then you're the boss. White man has done this trick everywhere. Here in America, to the Indians. He sent one priest to the Indians in New York, and another priest to the Indians in Pennsylvania. And both of them would tell lies to both Indians. And the Indians who had never been at war with each other would start beating the tom-tom, the war drum. And then as they got ready to come together and fight, the priest would run in and say, let me be the mediator. The New York Indians, you move out to Minnesota. And the Pennsylvania Indians, you move out to Oklahoma. That would leave the whole state of New York and Pennsylvania for the white man. You see how he does it? He's all over the world. He does it. He's a mediator. He's an instigator and a mediator. He instigates division and dissension. And as soon as they start fighting one another, he says, okay, I'll settle it. If you don't think so, look all over the world right now. Every place on this earth, you got a division. South Korea, North Korea. South Vietnam, North Vietnam. Right or wrong? He is the one that makes this division. He don't let nobody get together. But when it comes to his kind, it's united. United States. Meaning all white people are united. United States of Europe, or European Common Market. They want to get together. But when you start talking about a United States of Asia or United States of Africa, well, he said, oh, no, too many different languages. Y'all don't have nothing in common. You see how he does it? He always discourages unity among others, but he encourages unity among his own kind. United we stand. That don't mean you. You are your hair. Yeah, Negroes jump up and say, yeah, united we stand. They don't mean you. That means the white man. The white man is the one who stands united. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that these devils went back into Arabia. When they got there, they started telling lies. They started confusion. And in 6 months' time, they had turned heaven into hell. Oh yeah, I had so much fighting going on among our people, brother, it became hell. We never did fight each other. We loved each other. We're in harmony with each other. And when these devils came back into our midst, they turned our paradise into a hell. So it was taken to the king, and the king looked in the book and said, well, these are Yaqub's people. They were made to do what they're doing, and the only way we'll have peace is to get rid of all of them, put them all to death. So the king gave the order for all of the devils to be rounded up. And by devil now I mean all those blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white things. He gave orders for them to be rounded up there in the east. And they were rounded up. They were rounded up and taken down to the edge of the Arabian desert. They were stripped naked, stripped of everything except their language. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we put a lambskin apron around their waist to hide their nakedness. We put them in chains and marched them across the hot sands of the Arabian desert. This is what the black man did to the white man, brother. This is what the gods did to the devil. Actually, if you think that I don't know what I'm talking about, those of you who are Masons, those of you who have gone into the Masons, you go through this and don't understand. When you go in, they put a lambskin apron around your waist. They put you in what's called the cable's hole, right or wrong. And then they make you jump up and down on an electric mat. Make you take off your shoes and make you put the juice in the mat and make you jump up and down. Why? What are they getting at? That's all a sign of what happened to the white man 6,000 years ago. It just don't. But you're supposed to be walking the hot sands when you jump up and down. Right or wrong? You all been in some of that stuff. They tell you that that's crossing the hot sand. And you go up to old Negro Mason and ask him, when you cross the hot sands, were you walking or riding? He tell you, I was walking. He's a fool, because he was riding. He was riding horseback. He was riding on a camel. It was the white man that was in chains. It was the white man that had the apron around him. It was the white man that was walking the hot sand. We walked him at high noon. We wouldn't even let him walk at night. We stopped at night. And you know how hot the sands are, the sun and the sand is in Arabia. We expected the white man to die when we were running him out of the east. But that fool lived, brother. He lived. A lot of them died on the desert. And I might come back. In the Masonic. All of this is tied up in the Masonic ritual. When a man gets initiated into the higher degrees of that order, he goes through this. They put on the chains, they put on the apron, and they darken him up and pretend to be driving him across. And then when he gets up to the top order in those degrees, they tell him what it means. As a white man, they tell the white man what it means. A white Shriner or a white Mason what it means. The Negro never learns what it means. But it actually points back toward the time when the white man, who is the devil, as they say, was cast out of the garden. When the Bible says Adam sinned and was cast out of the garden, this is what it is meant. And an angel was put at the east gate to keep him from coming back in when the white man was run out of the east by the Muslims 6,000 years ago into the caves of Europe. The people called Turks were put there at the straits of the Dardanelles with swords. And any old devil that they caught trying to come back across the water, off went his head. The book tells you that the angel had a flaming sword. And any time any of them tried to come back across, they were put to death. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the white man went down into the caves of Europe and lived there for 2,000 years on his all fours. Within 1,000 years after he had gotten up there, he was on his all fours. Couldn't stand upright. You watch your old cracker today. Crackers don't walk upright like black people do. They're about to, every time you look at them, they look like they're going right down on their all fours. But those who have had some education, they straighten up a little bit because they're taught how to straighten up. But a black man can be the most dumb, illiterate thing you can find anywhere, and he still walk like $1 million. Because by nature he's upright. By nature he stands up. But a white man got to be stood up. You got to put a white man on the square, but the black man is born on the square. Can we prove it? Yes. Notice in the East, dark people carry things on the head, don't they? Just throw it up there and walk with it, showing you they have perfect poise, perfect balance. This comes natural to them. You and I lost our poise. You can't even wear a hat on your head hardly today. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that within 1,000 years after the white people were up in the caves, they were on the all fours, and they were living in the outdoors where it's cold. This is cold over there as it is outside right now. They didn't have clothes. So by being out there in the cold, the hair got longer and longer. Hair grew out all over their body. By being on the all fours, the end of their spine began to grow. They grew a little tail that come out from the end of their spine. Oh yes, this was the white man, brother, up in the caves of Europe. He had a tail that long. You ever notice anything that walks on its all fours has a tail? That which straighten up don't have a tail. Because when you get down, see, it just make that spine come right on out. And by him being on up there just like a dog, he was crawling around up there. He was hairy as a dog. He had a tail like a dog. He had a smell like a dog. And couldn't nothing get along with him but another dog. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that all the beasts up in Europe wanted to kill the white man. Oh yeah, they tried to kill the white man. They were after the white man. They hated the white man. So he says that what the white man would do, he'd dig a hole in the hill. That was his cave. And his mother and his daughter and his wife would all be in there with the dog. The only thing that made friends with the white man was the dog. Everything else hated him. He'd sit outside the cave at night in a tree with rocks in his hand. And if any beast come up to try and get in the cave at his family, he'd throw rocks at them. Or he'd have a club that he'd swing down and try and drive them away with. But the dog stayed in the cave with his family. The dog, and it was then, during that time, that the dog and the white woman amalgamated. The white woman went with the dog while they were living in the caves of Europe. And right to this very day, the white woman will tell you there ain't nothing she loves better than a dog. They tell you that a dog is a man's best friend. A dog isn't a black man's best friend. God is a black man's best friend. That a dog is the white man's best friend. They lived in that cave with those dogs. And right now, they got that dog smell. They got their dog lovers. Dog can get inside a white man's house and eat at his table. Look out of his plate. They'll kiss a dog right on the nose and think nothing of it. You're not a dog kisser. You don't see no black people kissing the rubbing noses with a dog. But little white children will hug dogs and kiss dogs and eat with dogs. Am I right or wrong? No, been inside the kitchen cooking their food and making their bed. You know how they live in there. The dog will live right inside the white man's house better than you can. If you try and break your way in there, they put a rope around your neck. But the dog has got free run of the whole house. He's the white man's best friend. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that they lived up there like that for 2,000 years. And at the end of 2,000 years that the scientists in the East, realizing that it was originally predicted that the white race would rule for 6,000 years and that they had already lost 2,000 years in the caves of Europe, they sent a prophet up there from Mecca to teach the white race, this race of death, how to become civilized again and get up on become upright and come back and rule like they had originally been made to. The name of that prophet was Moses. And this is why you have so many of what they call the secret books of Moses. Moses never went down into Egypt. Moses went into the caves of Europe and civilized the white man. It was Moses who went into Egypt and went into Europe, into the caves, and what we call raised the devil from a dead level to a perpendicular and placed him on the square. Moses taught the white man how to cook his food. Moses taught the white man how to build a house for himself. He taught the white man also some of the technology that Yakub had originally meant for them. And it was Moses who put the white man back on the road towards civilization and told him that he's supposed to rule for 6,000 years, that much of his time had already been lost, but that at the end of time, one would come who would destroy the whole white race. Moses taught them this. Now this is why when the Jews, 2,000 years later, the Jews were looking for the Messiah, and they thought that Jesus was the Messiah. And they put him to death because they knew when the Messiah comes that the Messiah was going to destroy that whole race of death. The Jews knew this. So they put him to death, thinking that they could stop him from destroying them. But actually they made a mistake, because Jesus 2,000 years ago wasn't the Messiah. Their time wasn't up 2,000 years ago. Their time would not be up until 2,000 years later, the day and time that we're living in right now. So, brothers and sisters, my time has expired. I just wanted to point out that the white man, a race of devils, was made 6,000 years ago. This doesn't mean that to tell you that they were made, that this implies any kind of hate. They're just a race of devils. They were made 6,000 years ago. They were made to rule for 6,000 years. Their time expired in the year 1914. The only reason God didn't remove them then was because you and I were here in their clutches. And God gave them an extension of time. Not them an extension of time, but they received an extension of time to give the wise men of the East the opportunity to get into this house of bondage and awaken the lost sheep. Once the American so-called Negroes have been awakened to the knowledge of themselves and of their own God and of the white man, then they're on their own. It's left up to you and me then whether we want to integrate into this wicked race or leave them and separate and go to our own. And if we integrate, we'll be destroyed along with them. If we separate, then we have a chance for salvation. So on that note, in the name of Allah's messenger, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad,
and the first Jew is Abraham. You don't have a single, his mama wasn't a Jew. His daddy wasn't a Jew. They says Abraham was the first of the Jews. Your own Bible says it. So then, anything about the beginning of the world must be something he thought of. He had no concept of it. In 1675, the Africans along the Nile were already in their 13th dynastic period. 13th dynasty. I'm not talking about the pre-dynastic period. Are we to say that the Africans here had no concept of religion before Abraham was born? When Abraham was born here, in the city of Ur in Chaldea, this Chaldea was already a colony of these Africans. These Africans calling themselves Elamites. E-L-A-M-I-T-E-S. So that even Abraham was born at a time when the Africans was controlling the state where he was born. The book, furthermore, the book of Genesis isn't written when Abraham is born. It isn't written until 700 BC at the Sanhedrin, when Jewish scribes decided, and they did not even write the book of Genesis as the first book. They wrote the book of Exodus as the first book. But it looks silly to say that people are running from a place and they're not born yet. So at the council of Jamia, they changed Exodus and replaced it with Genesis, the same thing they did with Luke and Matthew. Luke was the first book in the Christian Bible, but it looks silly talking about to a woman a child would be born in the first book, and in the second book to a virgin a child would be born. So they had to switch these two. They've been switching all over the place, but it's not been new. But what was the switching? The switching was to remove a certain people from here, a people called Africans, your people and mine. And it came about in the year 325 AD, when a Roman emperor, Rome, right here, by the name of Constantine, you see, decided that Rome, which was warring, Rome which had been scourging the earth, Rome which had been raping anything female, Rome which had produced nothing but a scavenger nation that would go and take anything they could at the case of murder, was able to convince the early Christians. By the way, they had not taken on the name Christian until 212 at the Council of Antioch. Antioch is the first time people start calling themselves Christians. Jesus is supposed to have been dead 212 years before the first Christians. Jesus himself was never a Christian, because you can't be a follower of yourself. Since this is the first day of the birth of Abraham, the first Jew, and out of Judaism came Christianity, out of Christianity came Islam. That's why I put that. You're talking about terms of days. They tell you that the world is only 6,000 years old. So you're telling me that the world, that the world started 4,117 years before the birth of Jesus the Christ? If that is so, then the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Papyrus of Ani preceded this by 3,000 years. The Africans along the Nile gave to the world the first known calendar, and you can't have a calendar without astronomy. It is because of astronomy, the movement of the stars, the planets, the suns, and so forth, and the recording of them, you develop astronomy. And the Africans in 10,000 BC, in this stray, Adam should really feel bad behind that. 10,000 BC, more than 6,000 years before Adam at least, the Africans produced what is known as the stellar calendar, S-T-E-L-L-A-R, a calendar based upon the stars and so forth. And then refined that calendar in 4,100 BC as the solar calendar. Speaking, you understand that. They understood this aspect of it. And out of all of this came the fundamental principles upon the society in which the Africans developed and conducted. We have to then realize that in order for you to understand the development of the religion called Christianity, you must understand the source. First, we must know where Christianity started. The records show, whether you are a Protestant, a Catholic, or what, that Christianity started here at a place called Alexandria with Pantheus and Boetius. That's in Africa, by the way. And that from there, it spread out. But wait, what did Christianity come out of? Second page, version, King James, Reims, Douay, Gutenberg, Vulgate. These are there are about 15,000 versions. The sad part is that you don't have a version anymore. Not one of those versions is black version. Okay, you haven't used a black book yet, because if it is so, how come all the angels in your book white? How come all the prophets in your book white? In a black country. As we say, this is here 1983 years ago. But this religion went across here. It went from Egypt to Lesbos, now called Libya. From Lesbos to Numidia. Numidia is now called Tunisia. Then it went to Carthage, later called Carthage, today called Morocco. That's how it. Then it traveled down the Nile and went here, right here at the island of Philae, P-H-A-L-A-E, Philae, is where they established the first monastery, the first Christian monastery right here. And this religion existed 134 years before it went this way. But it came into this land as the worship of what is called the Herculaneum worship of Isis. Because originally, it was the worship of an African woman. It will seem strange, it should seem to you, that the first worship that man worshiped was not a man, not a god, but a goddess. The goddess Hathor. H-A-T-H-O-R. H-A-T-H-O-R. Hathor. Symbolized as a cow with a sun disk between her horns, which the Jews adopted and called the golden calf. The present Hindus adopted it and called it the sacred cow. When you go to Egypt right here and the western bank of the Nile, there is a temple at a place called Dendera, D-E-N-D-E-R-A-H, built in honor of goddess Hathor, and you will see 3,500 faces on each of the columns and our places of this African woman. And that's why they will have you go to Mecca and to Palestine and to, Jerusalem and to Bethlehem, but never to Egypt, never to Ethiopia, never to Nubia, to see the ancient tombs dug into the walls. I mean, when I say a tomb, this building is less than a quarter the size of the average tomb. I'm not talking about an 8x5 thing, where all the records are there. When you talk about this, the source of this having come to Judaism, but where did Judaism get its belief source? Along the Nile, when the Africans established the worship of goddess Hathor, the first known deity, long before they worshipped Ptah. That was the first known male deity. The first known female deity was Hathor. And then there was another a female deity by the name of goddess Nut. About the word heaven, the ancient Egyptian Africans call it Amenta. The opposite of that they call Abydos in the hieratic writing. But when this was thousands of years, there was no Adam and Eve story yet, there was no Jew yet, there was of course no Greece yet. We don't have Greece. Doesn't come in history until 833 BC when Homer wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. And Homer said that even the gods of Greece, the gods of Europe, the two first gods, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. And you know nothing about yourself. Your Greeks preach everything else, but know nothing about yourself. You're proud of everybody who learned from you, but not of yourself. Nathan and Denmark-Visi understood Christianity. They took up arms to defend themselves as Jesus took up a stick and whipped some in the synagogue. All right. Yeah. This European Jesus that you teach up on the wall, that know Jesus. Man, ain't nobody from this part of the world coming here whip the synagogue that's going to act like that and tell you to be moderate. But then again, there's some people with special interests, and their interest may not be necessarily your interest.
That's right.
There was a thing that said that those who call Lord, 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 Father, but then Simon Peter, you can be the first guy. Hallowing all the days my name, but who gonna betray me? That was, I hope that be a little warning. But all along the Nile here, when Abraham was born, what did the Jews have? Nothing. Goat, sheep herder. They came in here, and they met what? They met cities. They met an educational system here called the mystery system. They met medical practice, science, law, engineering. There is no Greece yet, there is no Rome, there is no Europe in history. When these Africans under Sesostris III changed the flow of this river this way to stop the inundation period. And now you're talking about you're afraid of mathematics and science, that black people don't do well in mathematics and science is only when we're singing. But even that we don't do anymore. We don't sing the African spirituals which we misname the Negro spirituals.
Spain for 700 years or longer, they introduced this to them in Masonry. That's why you see the Masonry goes from Christianity and it goes into an Islamic symbol when you go high up in the degrees. The white Masonry was introduced into Masonry because to try to lift them up when they opened up the 16 universities in Spain. Go get the golden age of the Moors and read up on the actual stuff that happened in Spain. Well, they also introduced Masonry as well as education to lift the beast up who was in a dark age, because it was a spiritual prophecy that they had to lift the beast up and give him a certain amount of time to rule before they came in and killed them. And one of the ways of doing this was spiritual alchemy, which since the Moors and that they put this guy Saint Germain up on the high levels and gave him the melody. And since he left, there's been a 98% failure rate. We only know of one person after that by the name of Fulcanelli who actually achieved the great works, which is nothing but the actual process of gaining melanin. Melanin, the key carbon substance of the universe. Stick with me because this is a lecture on melanin too. Okay? Now, so that's what's going on, and that card symbolizes that Aleister Crowley wrote death. Number one, let me explain some things about this God concept. I told you this in your Holy Quran. It says in the Holy Quran, this is the Lord that moves both laughing and the weeping, laughter and weeping. All things must return to God. He is the God that created both male and female from one single ejaculated semen. He is the God that bestows and enriches and will create all things anew. He is the Lord of Sirius, right in the surah of the Quran. Okay? Now what do they mean? Something that creates that means you're talking about Allah. The El, which means God, and the La, or the Lot, which means the triple blackness of space, and the actual goddess mother, which you would have. You get two words, the mother and the son. Allah. You have the triple blackness of space that's in the constellation of Draco. Triple blackness of space. It's so blue-black and so black that you can't even see it. So it has to reveal itself. And by revealing itself, it takes a netta-ax, which is a number 7, which is a netta-ax, and it cuts open the south gate, which is the vagina, and it reveals itself as the first star. That first star is called El, or Al, which is the reflection of the La, or the Lot, which means the triple blackness of space that you can't see. So the reflection is the first star of 8 stars, it's number 8, and it's called Al. You get the word Allah, which is mother and God, in one sentence, or in one word. You get the word Sophis in Greek, which means the same thing. Or you get the great mother Nut and her son Sut, or the great mother Apit and her son Sut, which is the first primordial God of all times called black. When we say to God Jehovah, when we say to God Yahweh, when we say to God Allah, we're talking about nothing but the same expression of the first blue-black God in Kemet called Sut. Later on fashioned as Ptah, Osar, and Amen, or Ra, you see. Now, this particular science is going on. So what is going on here? Let's get into this expression of God. You have 7 chakras in your body. You have more than that. You have 7 major. You even have some below the genitals and some up above the head. You got the 7 chakras, the navel chakra, the root chakra, which is at the sacral vertebrae. You have the heart chakra, the spleen chakra, the throat chakra, the brow chakra, and the crown chakra. When the crown chakra is lit, or magnified, or manifested through going through the triple blackness of space, which is the melanin at the base of the brain, even though melanin is all through your nervous system, the melanin at the base of the brain. Once it goes up into that triple blackness of space, in your brain, because remember now, as above, so below, as under, as on top, as within, as without. Those are the laws of the universe. You're nothing but the microcosm of the macrocosm. You are a small piece of the greater universe, which makes you God. Okay? If I do this little scenario, if I get a bucket of water, say that's the universe, and I take a cup and dip in that bucket of water, is not the contents in the cup the same as the one in the big bucket of water? It's just a little small. In your body is a small universe, okay? Now, when this particular Kundalini rises and the chakras line up and this energy of God rises up through the triple blackness of space, which is at the base of the skull and the top of the spine, called the medulla oblongata, the mouth of God, that chakra. Your crown chakra lights up based on the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and all of this. That lighting up is nothing but a reflection of a star. That crown chakra is on Jesus' head, which Jesus means title, Christ means title. You just know one man who got the Christhood, and you think that's the only Son of God. Okay? There's several Christs. There's 16 crucified Saviors. Get Percy Graves' book, 16 crucified Saviors. 17 with no more. Black Christian, the Black Buddha, the Black Heru, which is being the primordial Christ of all time, which is a part of this lecture. The Arton, okay? Metatron is a form of the Christ because Jesus, the one that you know of, was in the order of Melchizedek or Metatron, okay? Once this thing lights up, you become a star, a small star. After you leave this realm and go to other realms and complete certain graduations, Your final graduation after so many years by doing the right thing, because after you leave this classroom, you got to go to another classroom. Your final resting place and your final manifestation is nothing but a small star in the universe. So when you see those stars out there, all that is once somebody's soul. Check? That's why I'm not say, tell me about the stars. We put them there. That was once somebody's soul. That star is the ultimate expression of your soul that you can get to. Allah being the first, or you would say Sut, Jehovah, Yahweh, being the first is nothing but the magnification of the first human soul that manifested into God. Okay? Like I said, Allah, he said God set up laws. He can't set up a law until he goes through it. Then he makes it a law. That means the first one that you worship was the first one. It's just that you on down the line, but you are God too, because we all are part of the one whole. Everybody got that? Well, if you don't, get the tape and check it out. Okay, we got to go on. So that's the stuff, all right? Because we got to go right on. Okay, I'm doing good with time. Okay, dealing with time. Anybody got some gold seal? Because I'm going to need something after I get through this. I know I'm going to catch a cold. So somebody get me some gold seal or whatever when I go so I can be all right. Now, the Eon of Maya, what is Maya? Maya is an ancient Egyptian word, an ancient Kemite word that means truth, balance, order, righteousness, reciprocity, getting the stage and everything and the black nation back together on the true nature and the true order that it was once run. You understand? That is called Maya. The Eon of Maya, which is an estimated projection by a guy by the name of Freda Atchett, which was a part of a secret society called the OTO, which is his head was Aleister Crowley, by using the Holy Kabbalah, which is nothing but the precursor of your Bible. You just know the exoteric part of your Bible, but there's a whole other Bible called the Holy Kabbalah. The Holy Kabbalah, you can get several Kabbalahs, which is the breakdown of you and the breakdown of the universe, which your Bible comes from because the Kabbalistic priest gave you this Bible, and Jesus was a part of that Kabbalistic order with the Essenes or the Gnostic or the Sethians, coming out of Alexandria, Egypt, or Kemet, which is the prime time when they took all of the stuff out of the mystery system of Kemet and turned it over and made what you call your first part of the Christendom, or the Gnostics. You understand? Even your Hebrew, all of this comes out of Kemet. Now, studying the Kabbalah and breaking it down, he found out that there was a time, 44 years from 1948, was the Eon of Horus, or the Eon of Maya, would be established. That time, if you add it up, that would be 1992. Since we're about 10 years from behind on the calendar, the original calendar being your Sophic calendar, coming from Africa, or Kemet, then you have the Julian calendar, then you have the Gregorian calendar, the one that we are on, with 10 years behind time based on the white boy time. At that time, 1994 would be the year 2000, or about 12 years behind. In actuality, 1992 was the year 2000. Now, with that in mind, 44 years from 1948 would be what? 1992, I believe, which would actually be the year 2000. Now, dealing with the Chinese calendar, this is 1998, because their calendar is close to the original calendar, a few years off. It's 1998, which in 1998, it would still make it, about 4 years off, that would still make it around 1992, because 1994, as the Chinese have it, is called the Year of the Dog. And the Year of the Dog is the dog star, or Allah, and it's the Year of the Dog. When we went to New York, the Chinese were walking around with big signs saying, this is the end of the world coming 1994. You remember 2 years ago, they had it on the news and people was laughing at them. They said it was the end of the world because they would say they was on point because they knew that the year 2000 was 1992. And based on their calendar, 1998. See, they on point. You understand? We're behind time. Okay? Now, the Year of the Dog. Now, based on some things, we had the white boy had only a few years to rule, a couple of, well, let's say it was good 500 years to rule, totally. He had almost he's been fighting since the days of Horus, and we can go all the way back to 6,000 years. We can go all the way back, but when he ruled totally, because remember, in order for Maya to be established, the devil has to rule completely. is what it says in the Egyptian law. Set Typhon, who is the Egyptian devil, the second Set Typhon, would have to rule completely before Horus overtakes him, who is the original Christ figure. Okay? At that time, we have the white boy in his 500-year period was supposed to rule up until about 1914. But he got an extension. You can get the Nation of Islam, tell you that. You can get that in the message to the black man, right? That's in the message to the black man. 1914, but he got an extension. Because we were not ready yet, we were still deaf, dumb, and blind. Hell, we hadn't even been out of slavery for what, about 30 years, maybe, you know, about what, well, let's see, 1960, 1865, a good 40 years, 40, maybe 50 years, okay? So we know we wasn't fit for nothing, you know what I'm saying? We still crazy, we can't rule nothing. Why we gotta have a Messiah to come and jumpstart our brains. Okay now, at that time, because with all the knowledge, you still take it as something good, oh, get off, and you know, you go just like, come see me as you go see Michael Jackson, you know what I'm saying, make you feel good. But we ain't gonna internalize it, okay? Now, at that time, he got an extension, and he got the extension around 1904, when a blue-black god by the name of Aiwass, or Melchizedek, is a former Melchizedek, came back and gave a master, a white boy, who had been studying the occult sciences in England, gave them this particular, what we would call, this time extension. They had set up some orders by Blavatsky, which is in England, a woman, I think she was half black or something, she looked kind of black. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawns. These were the graduate schools of the other masonry, the York Rite, the Scottish Rite, the Groucho Rites. These were the graduate schools. So they set up the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and they had correct communication with what is called the Black Rite, or the Great White Brotherhood, meaning the Christ mind, where they had the ruling people of this planet and the ruling people of this universe. They had some things telling them, well, we're going to give you this stuff so you can create this time continuum so you can have a little more time to save your behinds. They did everything, and after Blavatsky died, she lost contact with these secret chiefs, as they call them, up above. And then the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who used Egyptian or Kemetic rituals, lost contact also. Then you had a guy who was a part of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, I think he was 21 or 22, went to Kemet. When he went to Kemet, he and his wife rose in 1914 around April the 8th, no, I think it was April the 4th through the 8th. Let me get the time right, because I want to get this good on whatever, but I'll give it to you in a few minutes. He went to Kemet around April the 4th to the 8th. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And he got his time continuing, because when he was there, his wife kept going into trance, saying, Heru or Horus is waiting for you. Horus is waiting for you. April, let's get the time right. Kept saying, Horus is waiting for you, or Heru is waiting for you. When he went there, April the 8th through the 10th, even though our stuff is on the 4th, April the 8th through the 10th, said Heru is waiting for you. He could not understand, so she kept going into trance. He took her to the British Museum and said, well, I want to, not the British Museum, museum that was in Kemet, Egypt. And said, I want you to pick out what was summoning you. And what she picked out was a picture, and I'll pass this around. Did anybody still got my card? Huh? Okay, cool. Well, let it go on through so everybody can see it. You know, don't fall in love with it. He took her to this particular stela or slate or slab of this wood, which has hieroglyphics on it, and it has a picture of Horus, a picture of the goddess Nut, which is the triple blackness of space, a picture of this winged globe with a dot in the middle, which is the black dot in you, the Bendu seed, the black dot, and a picture of this priest, a black priest, who was in later dynasties and all, and who was a priest of the priesthood of Amun-Ra. And this particular god, Horus, was summoning him, and when he got this stela on this was a picture of a black man that actually called him, and on it is the actual writings and stuff that went on to translate it. By doing this, he set up a ritual to Heru or Horus, and this blue-black angel called Aiwass came to him, and passed that around, came to him and gave him something called the Book of Law. The Book of Law. This Book of Law was a book, supposedly if the white people did what was in it, by rituals and by the system that this guy was going to set up later on called the OTO, his own masonry system, that they could receive something called the great works of melanin. And once they did this, when the eon of Maya that's upon us would come in, they would be saved by this melanin, okay? By this melanin. Just, you know, brother, just go ahead and pass it. Look, brother, don't read the book. Just go ahead and pass it on through. Just look at the picture and pass it on through. Don't be reading now. Look, don't get comfortable now. Look, I ain't trying to bust you out, but you know how it is. You know, you get bees that way sometimes. Now, what happened was, he set up this, and David did, he got this book of law. Now, I'll explain what this book of law is. Anyway, what happened was, they were in touch with the Great White Brotherhood, or the Black Right, who the order of, who Melchizedek or Awak was the top of, was the chief of. They gave them this stuff to set up a time continuum. It ran out, and will run out around April, but actually it ran out the first part of 1994. That's what time we in. And the first part of 1994. Now, what happens is this. They got to change this planet. They got to transform this planet back into its original path. They got to tear down all these buildings because the white man trying to copy Egypt or trying to copy Kemet. He built all these doggone buildings, and these buildings don't have no spiritual competition. Now the planet got a doggone wobble in it because all these buildings. So they got to clean this beast civilization off because he has raped the planet. We're the gods of the universe. So they got mothership. The one that you hear of in the Nation of Islam is a mothership that will take you to what is called the subterranean world, or the crystal city, which if you go to several places, Shambhala, which is in Asia, Mount Kilimanjaro, somewhere in a hidden part, Kentucky is one, Memphis is one, ancient Kemet is one, and a couple other places. When you go to those places, you can go down, which is called the subterranean world, where there's a whole other world. And on that world live the most superior of us. You see, the most backwards live on top of the planet. The most superior live in the planet. In a whole other world, with a whole, what you call a nocturnal sun, which is another sun, which is nothing but a chakra, electromagnetic force, where you got a whole other beautiful paradise. Also, there's a tunnel in ancient Kemet. I think it's in the area, Dakar, near the King Zoser, the first step pyramid of Saqqara. It's a tunnel that leads from Memphis, Kemet, Memphis, Tennessee. Okay? Right. To Memphis, Tennessee. There's a tunnel that leads there. So we talk about this underground world. Okay? Now, I made the point on my last day that some people could not understand this. I said, well, some white people got melanin. Look, go back and get Richard King's book, African Origins of Biological Psychiatry, where he tells you that 85% of African Americans have what is called a functional pineal gland that secretes melanin. He says 85% of white people have a calcified pineal gland that doesn't secrete melanin, and it does not give them the actual substance to survive on the planet when the planet gets ready to get rid of them. But he says 85%, that means you still got 15% of white people that's not even white. They're black people. They had them black babies all the time, you know. Put them up for adoption and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so you have a 15%. Now, with the 15%, that's still a great deal where you're going to have some white people that's going to turn against their people because they know what time it is. And they're going to try to come help us. Well, if they do the right thing, then God bless them. They be down. You see what I'm saying? And they're going to turn against their people. You see. And, not 15%. Because some of them know that thinking they white. Is talking about within that 15% and some other ones that do not have the melanin will turn against their people and try to do the right thing. But eventually, they will live 1,000 years, but they will have to be killed too if they don't receive the melanin. Now, if they are part of that 15% that got the melanin, they don't have to worry about it. But even if they do the right thing and they are saved from the cut list of who they're going to take the beast off the planet, eventually, they would have to die too later on. Probably they say, well, they'll live 1,000 years for their effort.
In 1885, a large library of clay cuneiform tablets were unearthed in what turned out to be the house of the correspondence of Pharaoh, located in Amarna, Egypt. This record office of correspondence still housed letters from various kings, chieftains, and rulers who were under, loyal to, or partners with Egypt. These letters were written during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who ruled from 1350 to 1334 BC. This is after the Hebrew exodus from Egypt, and it sets up for us the time period of the conquest of Canaan by Joshua, and the time of the judges recorded in the Bible. All of the so-called Amarna letters are written in the political language of the day, Akkadian. And the ones from the area of the Promised Land are of particular interest. They are all asking for Egypt's help against enemies and invaders. Egypt is losing its grip on its far territory, and the land is up for grabs.
As to the soul and the belief that it is immortal by nature, this is the crux of 3,000 years of Egyptian civilization. For Egypt was a one-issue civilization, and the immortality of the soul was that to which everything the Egyptians did was consecrated. That preoccupation with, almost obsession with, immortality is what is responsible for the tremendous temples, the tombs, the pyramids, and all of the attention that the Egyptians themselves lavished upon death, which was not seen by them as the end, but rather as the threshold to another level of transformation. That which leads, or which can lead, to the immortality of the soul.
Of the many arcana bequeathed to us by ancient Egypt, perhaps the most important is the least appreciated. It is the greatest secret of all, the book of what is in the Duat. It is a map of what to do in the afterlife.
Tale hidden in the
the general understanding among academics is that, well, the Egyptians were afraid of death and therefore constructed this elaborate ruse to con themselves into believing that death was not the end. But just bear in mind the possibility that maybe it isn't. Maybe they knew what they were talking about. If it's looked at from a different point of view, then the whole elaborate exercise takes on the guise not so much of superstition, but as a very elaborated and highly sophisticated manual of instruction. It's a sort of how-to-do-it book on immortality.
Is it possible that they were able to cross the great abyss? Do these tombs represent a technology that allowed the deceased to successfully pass through the gates of the Duat? Perhaps even, as they themselves declare, to rule in the afterlife? Where could such knowledge come from? Would it not necessitate the point of view of someone or something that was able to see both sides of the veil? Someone or something that was able to move between realms to share the knowledge of what lie beyond the great threshold of transformation? If we take them at their word, we are presented with a very rare privilege indeed. The pinnacle of a supernatural technology from a mysterious and ancient lost civilization, once reserved solely for the afterlife use of a god-king. These sacred magical texts may in fact be a roadmap of the afterlife, a magical ladder to heaven. The precision and scale of the engineering, the mastery of art, the almost supernatural control over the material world demonstrated by the ancient megaliths and statues is often of a much higher order than we are able to exercise today. Is there any reason to believe that this same degree of technology might not be brought to bear on the primary focus of the Egyptians, the afterlife?
We're in the tomb of Thutmose III, an early New Kingdom pharaoh, and a very great pharaoh. It was Thutmose III who carved out the Egyptian empire in the Middle East and is often known as the Napoleon of Egypt, which is a bit of an insult to Thutmose III because Napoleon is not necessarily a nice guy. Anyway, in this tomb, we find one of just two complete representations of the Book of what is in the Duat. The Book of the Duat might be seen as a manual of instruction, a spiritual guide, the traveler's key to enlightenment, you might say. And it provides the information to the deceased pharaoh as to the precise stages that have to be undergone, the precise thresholds that have to be crossed in order to proceed from death itself, which is a threshold in its own right, to rebirth as a divine being, as a new sun, as a new Horus.
The Book of What is in the Duat details the pharaoh's journey through the Duat or afterlife. It is a handbook of spells and secrets that allow passage through the labyrinthine gates and thresholds of transformation encountered by the deceased.
Insofar as is possible, we can at least go through the hours and follow the action. So it starts over here with the scarab in a boat that's perched on the symbol that means water, preceded by 3 water snakes that actually represent larval forms, or you might say the first organic living form which cleaves the waters and divides one into 2.
In the first hour, the deceased may expect to be preoccupied with separation. The snakes are associated with separation or division. Seen in this context, they may represent the forces of dissolution or disintegration that become active in the first hour of the duat. The elemental forces which affect the unbinding of the physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of the self. The beetle between the 2 mirrored supporting figures suggests a consciousness arising from 2 mirrored hemispheres. If this is read as a representation of activity on the physical or material plane, this may be the representation of the brain, the physical vessel of the self, still bound to the processes and pull of the river of time. On the higher register, we see what seems to be an expanded representation of consciousness, made up of several aspects, several passengers.
The form up above in the boat is, you see the deceased within a shrine, ram-headed.
The divine spark of consciousness enclosed within matter is represented by the ram-headed Amun, who is depicted here enclosed within his tabernacle.
And they're in a boat with a number of divine personages. It's that boat that will eventually take the king, in different forms of that boat, that will take the king through the 12 stages or the 12 hours of the night.
The symbolism of a boat on the water demonstrates the consciousness being led through our mysterious interaction with the flow of time, through the landscape of the duat. Through the hours of the night towards its conclusion, a new dawn and a new day, a new life. Here, the constant flow of time is symbolized as a river, which gently, inexorably leads the inhabitants of the boat through the stages of transformation. The multiple characters riding the boat represent the many selves within us, or, to look at it another way, the many aspects of the self we think of as a unity. With constantly shifting celestial influences, each of the hours of the duat has its own specific effects, residences, powers, and dangers. We can observe the reflection of this in ourselves as we begin to note which of ourselves is at the helm at any particular moment. We are decidedly different persons at sunrise than we are at midnight. The sun is said to also have these shifting influences as it passes through the hours of the day and of the night. The parallel or correspondence between our consciousness and the sun is another aspect of the maxim, as above, so below. It is the symbolic link that connects the sun with consciousness and the metaphor of the journey of the consciousness through the stages of the duat, through the hours of the night.
In the second hour, in the middle register, the solar bark sets out with the flesh of Ra enclosed in his tabernacle. This time, in addition to the original retinue, 2 cobras in the prow are identified in red as Isis and Nephthys. The personification of magic occupies the place of she who guides the bark.
It is interesting to note that the twin cobras are identified as Isis and Nephthys. Together, they are the personification of magic. Individually, they represent intellect and will. In this we are shown that intellect and will are the primary components of magic. The presence on the bark itself of mind and will, and the explicit information that is here in the duat, that the transformations occur make it equally clear that a conscious and deliberate spiritual process is taking place.
In the third hour, both upper and lower registers are rich in Anubis and Osiris figures and symbols. The hour is called She Who Cuts Up the Souls. A passage in the text above the third register reads, "This is what they do in the West. Roast and hack to pieces the souls, imprison the shadows, annihilate those who are not, who belong to the place of destruction." The text is opaque and enigmatic, but the general tenor indicates a purgatorial region that the solar principle must traverse, a descent still deeper into the earth. The Christian conception of hell with all its demons and its hellfire is in all likelihood derived from the Egyptian, but the Egyptian didn't revel in all the details of the smell of the roasting flesh and the pain of the hacked bodies. Rather, they were expressing, basically what the Egyptians were doing was declaring that the souls of those who hadn't done their inner work, or who obstructed those who were trying to do their inner work, ended up in oblivion. In other words, their names, their identities were obliterated. They weren't consigned to the roasting flames of hell forever, but rather non-existence was considered punishment enough. In the fourth hour, the actual coffin is shown descending into the earth, a schematic that actually represents the tombs themselves. You see the coffin in red, the larval forms in front of it, and the coffin is actually going to its final resting place. In the fifth hour, the coffin over here has come to its final rest in the bowels of the earth. This is the birth of the new sun god in the depths of the earth. The life force bursting from the egg forces the earth above into a bulge. At the nadir of the descent of the solar principle, life bursts from its egg with the potential of rejoining the solar source. The winged serpents no doubt are meant to symbolize this potentiality in one form or another. The egg of Sokar represents the final, the most inanimate state of matter. It's the bowels of the earth. But in the egg itself is spirit, the hawk-headed Sokar, holding apart, again, with the winged spirit and this mysterious triple-headed serpent with the deity at the other end. But the power of immanent life within it. In other words, this represents the power of life to reascend and become spirit. Actually forces a bulge in the earth above it. It's still in the register above that. There's a mound of earth on either side, two birds representing Isis and Nephthys, and a scarab underneath, buried in the earth, pulling the tow rope that's attached to the solar bark forward and upward. And the sign all the way up above is the little sign way up here represents heaven. In other words, the power of the entire enterprise is pulling the boat, is pulling the boat heavenward. It's from its resting place up eventually through its stages of transformation to the heavens.
This is the culminant moment of a life well lived. The consciousness rooted in heaven, using the fulcrum of a higher dimension, pulls the lower register to the upper, a bridge, a ladder to the realm of the netter. If we have cultivated the new life at the center of the ball of dung, it is here that we have successfully transmuted physical matter to divine, the summation and consequence of our inner work. This is the egg that was being pushed by the scarab.
In the sixth hour, once again we have the solar bark with the flesh of Ra, now not being towed forward, but simply resting on the water. Here it is confronted by a familiar figure in the funerary text, a great serpent that's being chopped up by knives. This is the serpent Apap, or Apopis, which is a form of Set, the opposition. And in order for the entourage to pass, Set has to be cut in pieces, or Apopis has to be cut in pieces every night. And then, because the opposition is as immortal as divinity itself, Apop by night has reconstituted himself and is again the opposition. But in order to pass, the opposition has to be overcome. In the 7th hour, Apophis having been disempowered, the boat continues on its way, towed by a number of personages, and the imagery here shifts into symbols connoting transformation and metamorphosis. The signs of weaving appear. The 4 rams here represent the 4 states of matter. These are transforming principles that are taking the flesh of Ra, the deceased, from a lower to a higher level of consciousness.
The themes of metamorphosis, the symbols of weaving, and the presence of the 4 elemental states suggest a return to the basic building blocks which are later rewoven, recombined to create a new physical vessel. This might be seen as a representation of breakdown and resynthesis. The 4 rams corresponding to the 4 states of matter, identified in alchemical terms as earth, air, water, and fire.
In the 8th hour, the entourage has now gone up to the top. Here you see the various characters, the various deities, seated on that little upside-down Y in red, emphasizing or highlighting its importance, and that little sign represents bolts of cloth or weaving. So again, it's the weft and the warp and the putting together of disparate forms. In the 9th hour, the boat now continues with a number of mysterious, more mysterious symbols. Khepri, the scarab beetle on the top, is now rolling its egg forward. Its eggs, of course, with its own future enshrined within. The sun rises between 2 serpents. Underneath, as the boat proceeds forward, are the drowning ones, and the texts here this is rather interesting because the texts exhort those who are in the water that they don't have to live this way. They can effectively arise and be born again, and these are not the enemies of Ra, but rather they become the lost sheep in Christianity, those who have lost their way, who have gone astray, who are not following the path. But in Egypt, they don't have to worry too much about damnation and going to hell. All they have to do is get their act together and start behaving the way normal human beings are supposed to behave.
Hour 9 depicts the bodies of those unfortunates who have become trapped underwater, those who had taken a wrong turn and became ensnared in the labyrinth of the afterlife. On the archetypal register, we see a symbolic depiction of the higher processes at work. The beetle rolling its egg towards the sun symbolizes the great work, the creation of a higher consciousness. Next to this, we see another representation of a risen sun between 2 standing snakes. This may be a depiction of a new consciousness accomplished through the risen Kundalini, symbolized by the standing snakes. The snakes are crossed, perhaps indicating a harmonious interworking between the hemispheres. The crowns on the twins symbolize the solar and lunar principles, which creates another strong symbolic link with the functions and attributes of the left and right brains. If this weren't enough, a further clue reveals itself hidden in the geometry and negative space of the grouping. When compared to an overlay of the human skull, its full meaning becomes more apparent. The risen sun of the higher consciousness appears at the site of the 3rd eye. Precisely the point at which the Egyptians depicted the risen Kundalini cobra in their various statuary and sculpture. The twins each have a hand raised to their heads. They appear to be thinking or drawing attention to the head, further indication of the cerebral nature of the hieroglyph. To the right of that is what seems like a depiction of balance, perhaps indicative of the stability achieved through harmony and balance of the hemispheres of the poles of consciousness.
In the 11th hour, the process is almost complete. The bark is being towed forward. The rope itself now takes the form of the gigantic coiled serpent. The personifications of the hours are transporting or preceding the boat. And once again, this is Mehen, the enveloper, probably the origin of our familiar figure of speech, the coils of time. Up in the top register, emphasized in red, a small divine figure riding on a serpent in the company of 10 stars. In other words, this is the serpent in the sky. This is intellect made divine, or the serpent representing duality, once again uniting with, or this is duality reconciled, or a new one. And the legged winged serpent now appears up in the upper register between the two eyes of the solar and the lunar eyes of Ra.
In hour 11, we see the united hemispheres become the androgyne, the solar and lunar principle fused together. This powerful and sacred symbolism has echoed through history, and strong correlations can be seen between these hieroglyphic symbols and many later depictions of the alchemical stage represented by the androgyne and its divine offspring. This inspiring moment seems to indicate a mastery over the coils of time, perhaps indicative of a timeless period in which the higher consciousness of the deceased can reside with the gods.
In the 12th hour, the process is complete. The bark, now with a scarab beetle in the front, is being towed through the backbone of this enormous serpent, which Walid Lubitsch thought was a parallel to the Kundalini energy of the Hindus, in which lies coiled at the base of the spine.
Any real technology for navigation through the wheels of the afterlife might also include a gate for a return to physical incarnation. The 12 figures spanned by the snake might be seen as representing the spine and an outstretched Kundalini snake. Taken together, they might be seen to represent a sexual event on the physical or material plane, which will provide an opportunity to return to physical incarnation. The cycle returns to where it began.
And here, this is a parallel expression of the bark of transformation passing through or releasing the Kundalini energy, and this results in a new sun in the scarab beetle pushing associated with the head of the dead king, which is associated with the new sun, pushing its way through the earth into immortality, actually. In other words, it's another expression of the pyramid text. Ba and Ka unite, become a star, join the company of Ra, and sail with him across the sky in his boat of millions of years. It's a similar parallel. This is the same teaching expressed in New Kingdom terminology in this extraordinarily complex text.
The tomb itself was only one component of this science of life and death. The pharaoh's body also played an important role in this strange technology.
This takes us actually to the strange practice of mummification. Our embalming rites that we carry on today routinely in a number of funerary traditions are probably pale versions of what the Egyptians went through thousands of years ago. Over the course of a couple of thousand years, this process got more and more elaborate until in the New Kingdom, in the tombs of the Valley of the Kings, that process reached a culmination that is incredibly complex and, to us, somewhat repellent. After these 70 days, the mummy is swathed in mummy wrappings and cloth, into which are wrapped all sorts of magical amulets, scarabs, funerary texts themselves, and the body is finally brought to its final resting place. Now, the process seems to us, to say the least, excessive. But if we start from the proposition that maybe the Egyptians knew what they were talking about, it's worth looking at this as something perhaps more than just superstition or an incredible amount of detail lavished upon superstition. Maybe this accounts for both the incredible attention, work, money, time that went into mummifying a dead pharaoh, and this kind of shiver that comes through you when you think of it. There's something repugnant about it. You shouldn't need to have to go through all of that. The thinking was that perhaps as long as the physical body of the pharaoh existed, the discarnate or disembodied ka, or soul, of the king was not obliged to reincarnate. And that corresponds in its own way to the Tibetan understanding that the objective of the whole exercise of life, you might say, is not to reincarnate, but to become a star and join the company of Ra and sail across the sky in his boat of millions of years. So I can't say if that is actually the explanation, but to me it made sense. It accounted for both the incredible amount of attention paid and that somewhat repellent feeling that you get when you are taught about this process, because it's, in a way, it's a kind of a spiritual dodge, you might say, that you're kind of given as much time as you need to carry on work that is supposed to be done, in theory, during life. And if there is anything to the notion of spiritual work carried on in the disembodied state, then to that, let's say, to that ongoing work, as long as the body remains, the soul is not obliged to reincarnate. And in the case of the mummified pharaohs, if the mummies are not pillaged and ruined and exposed to the elements, if they are actually left in their original resting places, they are there effectively eternally, because they're subject to geological time, not to any other kind of time. The mummies that have been found now and exhumed and examined and studied and x-rayed and so on are in pretty much perfect condition after over 3,000 years. So unpillaged, unstudied, and unexhumed, they'd simply be there forever, until the mountains themselves, or the tombs into which the deep caves that they're buried in themselves are destroyed in some sort of geological cataclysm. In any event, to me, this makes much more sense than simply assuming that the Egyptians were a bunch of superstitious idiots who put all of this incredible amount of attention into preserving the body of a dead pharaoh.
The physical body of the pharaoh was rendered timeless, perhaps turned into an open gate, or perhaps a type of anchor. It was heavily supplied with all manner of spells, amulets, talismans, and other forms of magical protection. The strange practice of mummification still holds many mysteries. Why were some organs carefully preserved while the brain was scooped out and discarded? An unexpected insight into this question can be found in the work of Dr. Rick Strassman. His pioneering work has raised some very important questions about the pineal gland and its interaction with a strange hallucinogenic chemical known as DMT. Could the interaction of these two components be the seat of consciousness? Could it in fact be the gate through which we enter and leave each new life?
In terms of how the study started, I was interested in seeing if I could determine a biological basis of mystical states. That was probably how things started in the first place. And I was quite impressed with some of the commonalities that seemed to occur between spontaneously occurring mystical states, such as those that occurred with meditation and with spiritual practices, and even those described, from near-death experiences. Quite a few of those descriptions seemed quite comparable to descriptions of people on large doses of psychedelic drugs. And so I started to think about the possibility of some kind of compound in the brain with psychedelic properties that could be underlying some of these spontaneous experiences. I began becoming interested in the pineal gland as a possible source of some kind of psychedelic chemical in the brain. It's an extremely mysterious organ. It's quite small. There seemed to be some kind of a kind of visual correspondence with light and with color in the pineal. And also it has quite a long history in the context of the mystical literature. It's been described as the third eye and as the crown chakra, those kinds of things. And it's spoken of as being activated when people attain quite high mystical states. So one of the interesting aspects of pineal development also is that it appears in the human embryo at around 49 days of gestation. And 49 days is also the time that the Tibetans believe is required for one soul to incarnate onto the next. So that was a pretty interesting, coincidence. At the time of the differentiation of the fetus into either male or female, that also occurs at that 49-day period. And so I was struck with this interesting kind of temporal, correspondence. And so as time went on, I started, looking into some of the chemistry of the pineal gland. And it seemed as if it was capable of making a compound called DMT. DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine. It's like a chemical cousin of serotonin. And it's quite a profound hallucinogenic type of chemical. It seemed as if the pineal contained all of the precursors and all the enzymes and all of the building blocks that would be required to make DMT. So I started speculating about perhaps there was DMT released in the pineal gland and stimulating the brain under extraordinary states, either through spontaneous mystical states, the time of death, or at times close to death. And also I started speculating that perhaps it was stimulated at the time of birth as well. The pineal gland is extremely well protected from stress, but you can stress the pineal gland if the stress is great enough. Pineal's protective mechanism can be overridden. And so obviously the most stressful time in a person's life is at the time of death. The stress hormones like adrenaline and endorphins are at extraordinarily high levels at the time of death. And so that could, possibly stimulate the formation and the release of DMT from the pineal gland at that time. And so you can, conceive of an individual's consciousness at the time of death. I'm kind of being exposed to this big flash of DMT. So the last thing that one is conscious of in the body is the release of this huge amount of this incredible psychedelic compound.
During his testing, Strassman discovered that abnormal levels of the chemical DMT triggered states of consciousness that closely paralleled common experiences of an afterlife.
Well, that's true. Almost everybody experienced an extremely profound and extremely unmistakable separation of their body and their consciousness from each other.
DMT at higher levels acted as a type of catalyst for near-death experiences. In fact, it seemed to actually induce the machinery of the afterlife to swing into motion.
I suppose one of the most unexpected aspects of the study's results was the frequency with which people described a kind of contact with these intelligent kinds of entities that were conscious of them and interacted with the volunteers in this quite strange space. So these entities were both helpful and, kind of malevolent as well. Some of the helpers were kind of angelic, while other of these entities were kind of malignant and threatening. And actually a handful of the volunteers experienced, some traumatic encounters with these entities.
The hallucinogenic state, like the dreaming state, is a temporary disconnection from the physical body. The dreamer becomes a discarnate intelligence, traversing higher realms, no longer bound to the restrictions of time and the standard laws of physics.
DMT is, kind of a portal, or, kind of a door for the transport of the spirit out of the body, it appears to me. In some ways, the occurrence of DMT in our brains, in our bloodstream, is kind of validation of a spiritual reality in quite a few ways.
Could this strange chemical be offering us a window into events to come in the afterlife? The frequent appearance of helpers or assistants to ease us through the transition to other planes of existence suggests at least a strong parallel with funerary and afterlife traditions throughout history. The discovery of the unusual properties of the pineal gland illuminate the many strange references to this most mysterious part of the brain. In strange and unexpected ways, the temples demonstrated a special emphasis on the pineal gland and its role as the intermediary between mind and body, the seat of consciousness, and possibly the gateway into and out of life. The results suggested that the mysterious pineal gland may be linked to the mechanism through which we enter and leave our physical bodies. Could this have been the reason that the brain of the deceased pharaoh was removed? Was the pineal a kind of link or bridge or tether between the physical mummified body and the consciousness? From the very beginning of time, we see evidence of a science that described and somehow aided the transition of consciousness from a material existence to existence on a higher plane. It appears as though this science used as its training ground the realm of dreams. The everyday act of dreaming may be a much more mysterious activity than most imagine. It may be a portent of things to come in the afterlife. The strange state of consciousness that one achieves during lucid dreaming might be the secret ability that opens doors in the afterlife. The dreams of a lazy or unstructured mind are diffuse, wandering. The dreamer is frequently not in control or in a state of passive viewership of the events in the dream. On the other hand, the dreams of a disciplined mind are lucid, meaning that a kind of continuous consciousness bestows upon one the ability to recognize the dream state and consciously act to control it. The lucid dreamer can in some cases exercise truly godlike powers in his dreams. This is the stuff that comprised the constant work performed by the initiates of the temple to harden and perfect this gem of attention, will, and mental clarity. Latter-day rituals call for the ceremonial opening of doors. Are all these exercises training the subconscious to be continuous and proactive in the afterlife?
It sounds like such a simple thing, and Constance read it someplace and said, gee, you can trigger lucid dreaming by just all day long as you pass through a door, touch it and go, am I dreaming? And it sounds so simple that you think, oh, this couldn't possibly work. First day I tried this, I'd walk through a door and I'd remember, oh, okay, I touched the side of the door and go, am I dreaming? And every time I did that, I could feel my eyes focus a little bit differently, and I sort of had to wake up and ask myself, yeah, am I dreaming? And you do it a few times. And that night when you fall asleep, you find yourself walking through a door and you go, am I dreaming? And all of a sudden you go, yes, I am dreaming, and from then on, if you're careful with it, you can continue on with your lucid dream.
As the lucid dreamer becomes aware of his or her presence within a dream, the ability is suddenly bestowed to steer the dream, perhaps by suddenly becoming able to fly or levitate.
When I was a kid, everybody dreams they fly, or at least I've talked to very few people that said that they've never dreamed that they've flown. But I always had dreams that I was flying when I was a kid, and it would just be great. I was enjoying it, and I could tell I was really flying because I had this wonderful thrill in the pit of my stomach, and there was the perspective, horizons changed, and the perspective of my view was just perfect, as if I was flying in an airplane, the same feelings. And then all of a sudden I'd say to myself, well, I'm flying, how can I do this? And that little bit of doubt all of a sudden just made me just tumble like Icarus. And everybody has that experience, I ask myself, well, how the devil am I flying? And then you lose your ability to fly. Well, since I've grown a little older and have done stuff like touching doors and other crazy little things, I can pop out pretty regularly if I'm not too tired and just want to go to sleep. I can pop out pretty easily, and I can stay out, and I can do it with just a little bit of concentration. Now all of a sudden I know, don't doubt while you're flying, enjoy it, you're out and stuff. So it just took a little bit of concentration, a little bit of energy directed in a certain way to keep me airborne in my dreams. What might be happening during the death coma, in those precious moments where people think you're dead, but there's lots of stuff going on. Now, what if you could keep your concentration going somehow? Directed it, keep it going through the moments when most people allow themselves to dissolve. They allow themselves to just go back into the energy matrix, energy consciousness matrix, or whatever it is. I don't pretend to know. But if there's a way to keep focused through one stage after another, at least the Book of the Dead would indicate there's a goal that you can reach whereby you retain your individuality, or at least your pure individuality, and retain the consciousness of the continuity of your own existence. And that might be the key to overcoming death. We see a very similar thing in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Only you've got a guy there actually saying, okay, George, now you're going there. You're going to see one of these things, so watch out. But there seems to be this technique, in the Book of the Dead, you're barred at a certain place, and the guardian of the gate demands that you tell him his name, and you go, well, there's odd little names, Scale Pan of Wine is your name, or Dirty Sandal is your name, or something. But everything's got a name, and he goes, well, okay, then you can pass, but you got to do something else, And so evolution seems to be a process of resistance to something, and then overcoming that resistance, and then being mutated by that struggle, and then you move on. That seems to be how evolution works. Why shouldn't it work in consciousness also? Every initiatory society today, let's say the Masons, everybody's dad or grandfather is a Mason. They've all gone through this kind of thing. It's no secret that in the initiatory process, you're stopped at a door. You got to really knock at the door of the temple, and you have to pass certain. You're questioned, just like in the Book of the Dead. You're questioned, and you have to come up with the right answer, or you don't get through. And just step by step, well, you get this far into the temple, and you meet somebody else, and hey, wait a minute, buddy, you're not getting past here unless you do something, and then you do that. It's just like in the Book of the Dead, only maybe not as complex. So another thing in Masonry that I think sets it really apart from, and really makes it a mystical organization. Although my father would say, no, it's not a mystical organization, that just pages after pages in the index of Kabbalah, come on, Dad. But what makes it mystical, even with those members who don't have a mystical, bent, is that they have to memorize tons of stuff. Tons of stuff. The master's lecture is 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the speed. And it's wonderful stuff. And these guys do it. They're 90 years old up there doing it, Just like whoever had to prep themselves with this Book of the Dead thing. Okay, they had to memorize a ton of stuff. So I can just imagine. It's like a pep talk, Okay, I'm dead now. I better take control of this experience. Otherwise, I'm going to be eaten by a hippopotamus with a crocodile head, My soul's just going to just disperse, So I better get a hold of myself. Okay, I'm walking through a door. Oh, there's a guy there. I know his name. He's going to ask me, what's my name? I know his name, Crocodile Sandal is your name, And just one thing after another. Don't stop. Okay, don't stop. Don't pause. You got this and this and this. I know your name. Here's the name of your socks. Here's the name of your floor. Here's the name of the hasp on the door. Here's the name of the thing. Okay, go on. Okay, then I go on to the next step. And then I memorize. I've got this all memorized. I know just what I'm going to see. I know just what I'm going to say. I've built this temple inside me with my memory. I've already built it, okay? And it's inside me, and I'm going through the thing, and there's a door way at the other end I'm shooting for, and I'm not going to take a breath. I don't need to take a breath. I'm dead. I'm going to go all the way to the end before I let my concentration drop. And if you get all the way to the end, you've gone someplace in your own temple that most people never get to in the death experience. In a strange sort of way, I could see how it might even hold the key to overcoming death. Overcoming death is just gaining knowledge of or having consciousness of the continuity of existence. And there might be a technique in order that would enable you to perpetuate your consciousness of the continuity of your own existence. And the Book of the Dead may hold that.
Lucid dreaming may signal the onset of a higher state of consciousness. It may be a badge of attainment for the initiate, as is suggested in an alchemical allegory. The metaphor of the philosopher's stone, as applied to lucid dreaming, is a revealing one. Lucid dreams make their first appearance as fleeting moments in the dream state, with conscious work and practical exercises that reinforce the ability to lucid dream. The moments of waking dream time become more extended and controllable. In the metaphor of the philosopher's stone, the lesser stone is perfected through a crystallization or hardening, rendering it permanent. From here, we can extrapolate an even higher state, where the disincarnate intelligence of the deceased can be equipped with the mental tools, the strength and persistence of consciousness to remember itself through the transformation process and achieve a lucid afterlife. In this case, the philosopher's stone is the perfecting and making permanent the ability of the dreamer or the deceased to exercise conscious control, to rule the mysterious other world, accessed in both the dream state and the afterlife. The faculty of imagination seems to be the womb in which the fetus gestates. We can now see the process of perfection of the materia prima come full circle. If the alchemical steps are carefully observed, and the great work is persisted at during life, one's consciousness becomes the purified and perfectly structured philosopher's stone, the charcoal that becomes a diamond. It is impenetrable, permanent, and highly valuable. It becomes the permanent vessel of the self through the higher registers.
There's now, in the year 2003, ample literature testifying to near-death experiences, paranormal experiences. Again, these are mocked at by the opposition, by the skeptics, but the people who've had those experiences, and in fact very serious scientists and scholars who've studied those people, are convinced that they're not crazy and they're not fooling themselves, and that there is something that survives the body after death. So here in the Valley of the Kings, we see a testament to that Egyptian, call it belief, call it understanding, call it what you will, but in order to get anything out of the concept, and in fact anything out of this episode, it's useful to bear in mind that the Egyptians quite possibly knew what they were talking about when they went to this incredible amount of attention to mummify the body of the pharaoh, and the even more incredible attention that they put into building these fabulous, magically decorated tombs.
And that's why another thing that I'm really fascinated by is Obama winning the election, simply because there's only one type of human being on Earth that doesn't appear to have been seeded here by extraterrestrial races. In other words, most of the human beings on this planet are not local. There's a single blue-eyed ancestor that all human beings can be traced back to. The white person did not exist on Earth prior to about 10, 11,000 years ago because of this exchange with higher species in the time of Atlantis. That's when we started to have the first interbreeding occurring that led to blue-eyed, white-skinned people. The only people that actually seem to have been generated by the Earth's own evolution is black people. Those are the only racial types that we have on Earth that you don't see in people that come from other planets, and that makes them very special.
Well, and I was going to ask you, of all these varieties, these 57 varieties in the galaxy, why are we so different, and we have all these different varieties on this planet? I mean, are there some planets that have 4, 5, 6 different varieties of humans, or just one?
Well, here's the deal on that score. We are very, very unique in the sense of the sheer amount of racial diversity on this planet. And this is from multiple witness testimonies and from various other sources I've used, including the Law of One material. What happened is that...
It is fascinating when you think about it, David.
Yeah, I mean, the average
You've got a planet here with different races of human beings scattered all over the planet.
Right. And if you look at our own evolutionary record and what we've gotten from anthropology, there's 5 different major seeds of human civilization that all basically occurred at the same time, independent of each other, where these people look different and they have different basic biological characteristics, and there's no real genetic linkage that ties them together of having the same species or the same racial distinction before. It's like there's 5 different groups that all showed up at once.
Science will say that environment and climate is what did this over, thousands and thousands of years. Do you accept that at all? I guess not.
You can't explain why climate, for example, would lead to the physiological differences such
you need to get is that book on the book on the mucilus diet.
Mucusless diet.
Get that white boy.
Arnold Arad.
Yeah.
Arnold Arad.
You got to get that book, because the white boy tell you that in the book he says that my race is an abnormal people. He said in the book, he said my race is an abnormal people. They are not human. And then in the book he says about this, because he said all they are is a big clump of mucus.
That's right.
And so, Muhammad said that if they were grafted in the book, there'd be a clump of pus. And in that book he says that he got on the he started doing his mucilus diet, and he started changing black. The crackers start getting melody. Based on the shit. And he said he was changing black, and the white people ran him down and ran over him with a car and killed his ass. Yeah. That's right. In the book. That's right. Sure. The capstone of the pyramid is running the whole shit. That's the black dot. Because one of the names was the capstone is what? A black granite piece. Talking about the black dot. And it runs the whole rest of this thing. A pyramid is also a symbol of Sirius. You see what I'm saying? The sun behind the sun. Our sun is nothing but a reflection of a greater sun. You ever thought about that? I want to ask you a question. When you go outside this atmosphere, is it dark in space? Yeah. Well, see to me, if the damn sun was out that motherfucker, it should be light. Closer you get to the sun. Why you don't see the sun? That's because the sun is reflecting the light of a greater sun, Sirius. There's a black sun out there now. But what happens is when you get into your electromagnetic force field, it vilifies that black sun, and it catches the rays from Sirius, the sun behind the sun, the true father of the universe. That sun out there is a black sun. And if you look at it long enough and get the water out your eyes, it turns black on you. Just try it. Look at the sun. You see what I'm saying? They said Africans used to look straight in the sun. They said the Africans didn't start getting doggone cancer until colonization, till the stores brought a whole bunch of sunglasses over there. And they put on the sunglasses, And then one of the doctors over there said, I saw him coming down the fucking river, fucked up. He said, but they didn't have cancer for years until they brought the sunglasses over there. Because the Africans would look straight in the sun, that's your juice. But it's the sun behind the sun, the cosmic central sun, Sirius. Our sun is a relationship as a son to the real true father. But that father has a mother. Always remember that. God, there's something greater than God. It's just that you hadn't got to that point. God is only a grain of sand on a lonely beach compared to the great mother.
At the heart of Islam, there is a story about a place that always was. The story holds that long before the great prophet Abraham, before Adam and Eve, even before creation, there was a holy place, the celestial house of God. It is called the Kaaba, and its replica on earth remains today in the center of Mecca. The Kaaba symbolizes the worship of the one God, the God of Abraham. It has been a place of pilgrimage for countless generations, drawing people of many faiths, even some scholars believe, Jews and early Christians. But for nearly 1,400 years, it has been the exclusive domain of Muslims who come now by the millions. They circle the Kaaba and pray, one of the many rituals that are part of an epic 5-day quest for salvation. The logistical challenge of moving, housing, and caring for some 2 million people is matched only by the challenges of faith each pilgrim will face.
Pilgrims come back different people. They never go back to the life that they had before.
Now, we travel with 3 pilgrims and take an inside look at a journey that will test both body and soul. From Malaysia,
I'm always not comfortable in a big crowd. So now you're the biggest crowd. It's a test itself.
From South Africa.
You want to go to Saudi Arabia, they look at you. Who are you? Where are you coming from? And you are not allowed to go alone. Don't ask me where I am coming from or who is my father. It is Islam brought me to this place.
And from America.
I've been praying in that direction for years and years and years. Now I'm going to go there. It's just amazing to me. It's a dream come true.
Can't believe it. Let's go here.
They come because their faith requires it, as millions before them have come, to praise the one God. They come to trace the footsteps of one of the greatest prophets the world has ever known. They come to Mecca on the spiritual journey of a lifetime, a sacred pilgrimage known as the Hajj. Mecca sits in the western mountains of Saudi Arabia, in a sanctuary roughly 100 miles square. Since long before Islam, it has been considered sacred territory, where no one could hunt, cut trees, or fight. At the heart of the city is a great mosque called Al-Masjid Al-Haram, and at its center is the Kaaba.
All religious faiths have a center. This is probably an essential part of the religious mentality, of human spirituality. In Islam, that center is there in the city of Mecca, centered on the house towards which all Muslims pray.
Muslims don't worship the Kaaba. They worship what it represents, the one God. Beneath its cover, the Kaaba is a simple stone building that stands 50 feet high. Inside its golden doors is an unadorned room. According to one Muslim tradition, the Kaaba was built by Adam, based on a cosmic plan handed down from God, and then rebuilt by Abraham after the Great Flood. On its southeast corner, framed in silver, rests something called the Black Stone. Some believe that it fell from the heavens and that it was one of the building stones used by Abraham. Many pilgrims try to touch or kiss the stone, but most would be happy to simply lay eyes upon the Kaaba.
Allah says that Allah was created himself out of feminine half of the universe. Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, Allah created himself off the feminine half of the universe. The word and, how do you spell Allah? A-L-A-H. A-L-L. Now, the and, which means God. La comes from the word L-A-T, which means the feminine side, the great mother. And, which means God, which means light. La means nothing, the triple blackness of space. From the nothing you get the absolute. The nothing is what you call blackness. The blackness is the black God, which is nothing. So that's the mother of God. That's why you can't have a God without a goddess. But if you trace it far back to the ancient Egyptian and go on further back to the oldest stele in the world, the Temple of Dendera, you will see in there that the God that you call Allah, El Shaddai, Yahweh, and all has a mother, the great mother, the triple blackness of space, which is called Nut, Apit, Tyre. That's why you come out of the triple blackness of the womb. That's why the baby is female until the last month, whether it's going to be male or female.
No, this is done by those who were guilty of all those things that you just, the counterpart of all those things you just mentioned. The white people who were guilty of white supremacy try and hide their own guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching black supremacy when he tries to uplift the mentality, the social, mental, economic condition of black people in this country. And Jews who have been guilty of exploiting the black people in this country economically, civically, and otherwise hide their guilt by accusing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of teaching, of being anti-Semitic, simply because he teaches our people to go into business for ourselves and try and take over the economic leadership in our own community. And this other thing, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and what was this other?
And hatred.
And hatred. And since the white people collectively have practiced the worst form of hatred against Negroes in this country, and they know that they are guilty of it, now when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad comes along and begins to list the historic deed, the historic attitude, the historic behavior of the white man in this country toward the black people in this country, again, the white people are so guilty that they can't stop doing these things to make Mr. Muhammad appear wrong, so they hide their wrong by saying that he is teaching hatred. History is not hatred. Actually, we are Muslims because we believe in the religion of Islam. We believe in one God. We believe in Muhammad as the apostle of God. We practice the principles of the religion of Islam, which mean prayer, charity, fasting, brotherhood. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that since the Western society is deteriorating, it has become overrun with immorality, that God is going to judge it and destroy it, and the only way black people who are in this society can be saved is to not integrate into this corrupt society, but separate ourselves from it, reform ourselves, lift up our moral standards, and try and be godly instead of try and integrate with God instead of trying to integrate with the white man, or try and imitate God instead of trying to imitate with the white man.